Excited to have Jack Kelly on the podcast today. We've been trying to have a podcast for a while, but I've been in detention and injured, and you've been in Andorra and all sorts of things. Jack, host of the Triathlon Hour podcast, I would say probably the most popular podcast in triathlon. That might offend some other listeners, I don't know. And coach of many professional triathletes. How you doing today, Jack?
I'm good, mate. It's good to see you. There was a little bit of a little period of my life where I was worried the outside world might never see you again. I was a bit worried when you were locked up in Japan. I thought there's one place you probably don't want to get locked up for something like that, and it is Asia. I know as Australians, we've had quite a few people end up being in Asian prisons for the rest of their life and have never seen their families again. So I was relieved when you got out, mate.
Thank you. Yeah, I must say I've been a free man for a little over a year now, but I think this is actually a little fact that people don't know. I actually knew within about 2 days of being detained that I would get off with a suspended sentence within a couple of months. I got told by a lawyer who I hired very quickly through the Australian embassy, and he basically said, "How much did you have on you?" And I said, "It was like a couple of gummies, half a gram." He's like, "That'll be a suspended sentence. You just have to wait here for the trial." And I said, "How long is that going to be?" And he's like, 3 to 6 months. And I was like, "Oh, what? 3 to 6 months?" So I knew that it was going to be relatively short, even though the news put out all these wild things about me maybe facing up to 10 years. I knew that wasn't going to be the case. But I appreciate your concerns, mate. We were chatting quite a bit just before that all happened. So yeah, good to have you on anyway.
Yeah, I remember I sent you a WhatsApp message. So we'd been talking before you went to Japan, and I can't remember what I sent you a message about, but you didn't reply. And I was like, oh, he snogged me there. And then the very next day after I sent it, an article popped up that you're in jail. And I was like, okay, probably let him off on that. I was thinking like maybe I said something to upset him, but no, you're in the slammer. So fair excuse, probably the best excuse I've had from someone who snobbed me.
Not replying to a text. Yeah, was
Yeah.
unable to access my phone for those 4.5 months. Yeah, no, good to be out, mate. Even though, yeah, like I said, it's been a year now. And no, I'm looking forward to chatting about all things. In fact, you shot me a message the other day and said it'd be really cool to hear a podcast talking specifically about marathon and talking about specific workouts relating to the marathon, because actually I'll let you take over here and talk about some of the athletes that you've been coaching, because you've coached quite a lot of very high level Ironman athletes, many that have come top 10 at the world champs and so forth. And we'll dive all the way into that. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about what's currently a hot topic on my own podcast, which has come up on your podcast a few times in the past, and that's weight loss and fat loss, because you have had a huge, you have a very interesting story here when it comes to losing weight with training. So I'll let you take over.
Yeah. So when we first met in person, I was actually a real fat fella. I think I got up to, so I spent my whole life as an athlete, a junior runner, got into triathlon, and was really skinny, like sickly skinny my whole life. And then when I finally gave up the dream of actually being like a good professional triathlete, because I went through this cycle, right, where I would do everything right. Like I was one of those guys as an athlete that did everything right, but I just got injury after injury after injury. And I just gave up eventually after like 8 years of that, like barely being able to race. I think I got on like 3 start lines in like 8 years because of injury. I just gave up. And then after that, I was like, fuck it. I'm just letting loose here. And I just ate everything inside. I did not move. I didn't exercise. And I went from like 75 kilograms. I'm like 6'3", so really skinny, to I think at my heaviest I was like 125, 124.6 was the heaviest I saw on a scale. And that jump happened in like less than 2 years. So it was like an aggressive like gaining of weight where I really worked hard for it. I barely moved. I was disciplined with my diet. I was eating everything in sight. And then I got to this point where I was like kind of just getting, like I was starting to feel a lot of shame, like a lot of embarrassment. I didn't want to like leave my house. I was working for the PTO commentating. I didn't want to show up to them. And like the race that me and you met each other was T100 San Francisco. And I was commentating with Jan Frodeno, who has a body carved from, like, he could be in the Odyssey, right? He's like a Greek god style body, like skinny Greek god, but but Greek god all the same. And we'd done like, I don't know, 5 or 6 events together. And he came up to me at San Fran and he like pinched my belly fat and he's like, still hasn't changed, has it? And I was like, you don't reckon I'm in any better shape? And I wasn't. Like, if anything, I was probably like 3 kilos heavier than when he saw me last. And he's like, nah, you look awful. I was like, yeah. Like, see, I knew that. And I just spent 16 hours in a plane, like knowing it and like dreading showing up. And then to have this Greek god tell me I look awful and pinch my belly fat was a bit of a moment for me that it's like, sort your shit out, mate. Stop being such a loser. And so I did. Like, it wasn't long after that I got real aggressive with it. And I'm like, I'm just going to get back into shape. But I didn't do it in a healthy way at all. Or like, I didn't do it in what we think of as healthy and what we're maybe like pushed into thinking is healthy. Even though I've had no issues, like I haven't got injured, I've been getting fitter, you know, like I've had no negative repercussions of the way I've gone about it, even though every dietitian in the world, every Instagram nutritionist in the world would tell you I did it in a really toxic, unhealthy way of just like starving myself, probably overtraining, going from like 0 to 100 real quick in like a day. And yeah, I'm down to like, I'm like 79 to 81 kilos now. And I did that in, I don't know, I probably did it in like a year, 18 months, something like that. So like almost 50 kilos.
That's wild. Yeah, no, I remember very clearly seeing you, and I'd actually seen a couple of photos of you beforehand. It didn't really surprise me, but that story is cool because I've listened to your podcast quite a lot. Admittedly, I haven't actually been paying too much attention to triathlon in general in the last year, and I need to get back into that. But especially in 2023, 2024, I listened to most of your podcasts. And I think it would have been very powerful to hear Jan tell you that, because I know how much you respect and look up to Jan, arguably greatest of all time triathlete. For runners that aren't aware, you've done some great podcasts analyzing who's the greatest triathlete of all time, and he's, you know, always ranked in the top 3. I was there actually having lunch with you and Jan, I think a couple of days before that PTO. And yeah, I saw photos of you only about 4 or 5 months later, and I couldn't believe my eyes, honestly. I was just like, you've lost about 30 kilos since I saw you, like a few months ago. And I didn't ask you. But you also opened up to me a little bit on some DMs saying that you'd struggled a little bit with some, some mental health stuff, of which I, had opened up on my own podcast about. And we sort of spoke about that quite a bit, and I appreciated those chats. But tell me more specifically about how that weight loss looked. How much did you lose? How quickly? And how did you do it?
Yep. So I moved from Australia, where I was living in Melbourne, to Andorra, which is, for people who don't know, a tiny little country in Europe. It's kind of like nestled between Spain and France. It's up in the mountains. So I was living at like 1,600 meters above sea level on the side of a mountain. It's got like 80,000 people in the country, but it feels like it's got more like 5,000. Like, it's so isolated and there's nothing there. But there's a lot of professional endurance athletes. So good friend of mine, Jenkins, was there on training camp. Hayden Wild lived 400 meters away from me. Jan Frodeno, who we speak of, he lived there and he's trained there for ages. And there's just lots of really high level triathletes there. So I got there and I'd already started a little bit. To that point, I hadn't started exercising. I really had just started dieting, and I was starving myself, is the only way I could describe it. So I'd gone from the way I was eating. I would like order Uber Eats at like 11 a.m. in the morning. I would eat a lot. I'd get really full. I wouldn't move. I'd just sit on my computer or whatever, do work. And then probably again at like 5 p.m., I would order Uber Eats, eat a heap, go back on my laptop, not move much. And then like pretty regularly at like 10 p.m., 11 p.m., I would order Uber Eats for the 3rd time that day. And that was like my diet. That was how I was living. Very little activity, just a lot of laptop and phone time for like 2 years. And I did kind of the opposite of that. I banned myself from Uber Eats. So I'm actually coming up on my 18th, on the 27th of July. So in 3 days' time, will be 18 months since I've used Uber Eats. And I really just did the opposite. So I just started like starving myself, where I would not really eat until 2, 3, 4 p.m. I'd have a meal, and then I wouldn't eat it till the same time the next day. And I just did that every single day. And I started running, when I got to Andorra, I did my first run that I'd really done, and it was 15K with Yalageen. So he was there on altitude camp to prepare for the 70.3 World Champs, where he was the reigning defending champion in the professional men's race. And he was really fit. I did 15K next to him. I think we averaged like 4:28 per K. And I was fucked. Like I was so fucked. But I was just like, I'm just going to do this. Like I'm just going to not eat much. I'm isolated up on the mountain. There's no junk food here anyway for me to eat. And I'm going to run with Yalla 4 or 5 times a week. And the days where I don't run with him, I'm going to go run by myself for an hour a day. And I did that every day. And by the time he left, I was pretty fit, really. Like I'd started doing some track workouts. Me and him had done like some 20, 25K long runs, averaging around 4 minutes per K. And I was down like 20 kilos in 2 months. So it was really aggressive.
That's wild.
Yeah. And not a way that I would recommend someone else to do, but like, I don't know. That's my personality. I'm either all in or I'm not. And I was that way with like my unhealthy lifestyle that led me to being really overweight. I'm like that as a coach. I was like that as an athlete. I'm like that with my podcast. Like I'm either all in on it, obsessed with making it the best it can be, or I don't think about it at all. And I just did that same thing for my diet. And then yeah, like I don't know how long it's been since I've seen you, 18 months or something like that. And I'm like down from like 125 to 80-ish kilos, so 45 kilos.
Good on you, mate. That's a huge drop. I mean, yeah, 20 kilos in 2 months. I try and do that just because I've been so interested in weight loss over the last few years. I'm trying to do the math on like the calorie deficit involved there. It must have been a case of like burning 3,000 to 4,000 a day and consuming like less than 500 for most of those days, which is crazy. No injuries too, I think.
No, this is the least injured I've ever been, which is the weirdest part of it. I haven't had a stressy. I haven't had anything. Like I haven't had a day where I was like, oh, I feel like I've got a little bit of a niggle there. Let me have a day off. I haven't had anything. And it's been the weirdest thing ever. I think, do you know what I think was really important that I didn't say is when I was in Andorra, so it's pretty boring there. So you're either like training with people, having a coffee with people on your laptop doing work, or you'd go outside. Like there's just nothing to do there. And so what I was doing is I set myself the goal of trying to walk 20,000 steps a day outside of my training. So I would run like, say like that day I talked about with Yalla, that first one where I ran 15K. So I wouldn't have that on my watch for recording. Like I'd have that on my running watch, and then I'd have another watch that was for just my day to day. And I'll just try and get that to 20,000 steps. So whether I ran 15K or 10K or whatever, or 25K, I would still try and get 20,000 steps in on outside of that. So I just go for hikes where I lived, go hang out with people, walk down the cafe to meet them. Like the cafe from my house was 4K away. So like every day pretty much I'd meet someone there and I'd just walk there 4K, walk back up the mountain 4K. So 8K every day of walking just like that. After dinner, I'd go for a walk. I was just walking all the time. And I reckon that helped like prevent injury. I think that time on my feet, not running, just walking, for some reason made me super resilient to injury. Whereas and now, like I'm averaging like 16K per run that I do. I don't do double runs. I just do single runs. I'm not a huge believer in double runs. And yeah, I just do it every single day and I haven't got injured. So I think that foundation of walking a lot, I'll probably do that for like 3-4 months where I was just like walking 20,000 steps a day. I reckon it set me up really well. And it's something that runners who are like very injury prone could use. Like rather than go to the gym or rather than fixate on your diet, or these things that we're like led to believe might be the secrets. Like I really encourage you, just start walking more. Like
100%.
Don't just like run once a day and then be like, that's my exercise done for the day. Like I don't need to do anything else. Go and walk like 15,000 steps a day. Just try it. Just try it.
100%. I 100% underscored double click that whole monologue there, because I've had multiple times where I've been injured and I've been able to walk without any problems. And I've done the same as you, basically aiming for 25,000 usually with no running. And when I come back to running, it's such a seamless transition to get back into training. And I think it's just because you're doing all this really low level like movement and you know, and one thing that people criticize me about in the last few days when I put out a podcast, which has had very high downloads, it's a short one, so it's, you know, a bit different to a podcast, only 15 minutes. People are like, yeah, but you got a stress fracture recently, didn't you? Actually, that didn't happen as a result of being in a calorie deficit. That actually happened when I was gaining a little bit of weight. But I do really think that, and by the way, I got that stress fracture mostly off the back of what happened in Japan, because in Japan I was stuck sitting in a room for 4.5 months, like very comfortable place, to be honest. We can dive into that if you want. It was nothing like a jail, by the way. It was actually like a relatively comfortable little room, but I just couldn't do anything. I just had to sit there and read books, basically. And I was probably doing like 100 steps a day. Now, I was lazy. I should have just walked around the room more, but I didn't. I just couldn't be bothered at the time. I had no motivation. I was just like really pissed off about what was going on, thinking about how Japanese people love drinking alcohol and they idolize alcohol. And I'm like, I'd read all these studies over the last 2 years about how much worse alcohol was for you than what I had on me. And I'm just like, this is so stupid. Anyways, you can debate that on a different forum if you want. But my point is, I think so I hurt myself because I was sedentary, right? And because I wasn't moving. And every time I've done what you just said and spent a lot of time doing like lots of walking and doing emails and stuff on my phone and just like trying to get steps up, I also have no injuries ever. And I've had multiple stints in my life where I've done like a few months of not really any running, but lots of hiking and walking. And then I come back to running and I can get into like really good running shape within like 2 or 3 months after doing that. So I think it's a really underrated thing especially about running. If you do a lot of walking, and especially if you do it on like hilly and alternating terrain, because you're constantly like changing, you know, the angle in which your ligaments and tendons and muscles are moving, I think it's a really good tip. And it's something that is rarely talked about, to be honest. Like, do you hear about anyone else talking about this? I don't.
No, not really. And to be honest, I have a couple of these things that I use with athletes as like secret weapons that I don't talk about because I like to have little advantages. And another one that I've never talked about before, but I use with athletes is if you have an athlete who comes to you, I think I've also personally noticed this works really well for female athletes that have a history of bone stress, is it doesn't matter whether you're like a 2:25 marathoner as a female or maybe you get around in 4 hours and 30 minutes. I don't think it matters. And I say that because sometimes the better you are, the less inclined you are to do other stuff because you think, no, I'm a really good runner. So I need to, when I'm not running, I need to not do anything else. I've got to be careful. I've got to look after myself. I don't want to get injured. I actually think you should have the reverse mindset to that. Things like go and like shoot some basketball hoops with a friend, get a football, go to an oval, throw around and kick a football for 15 minutes. Like do things where you're moving from side to side, where you're jumping, where you're landing on one foot, where you're kind of like changing direction, where maybe you've got like just like all these really unfamiliar movements that you never do with running that you think of like kind of think of as something you used to do when you're a kid or in another life. You're like, I would never do that now. Trust me, if you're someone who struggles with bone stress, go and do it. Like buy a ball, whatever ball you want, netball, soccer, football, tennis ball. Go and like, if you don't have anyone to do it with, go and throw a tennis ball against a wall and like set yourself a competition of I'll throw it like fair way off to the left and I'll go and run and catch it. Like, I don't know, go and kick a football through some goals, go and kick a soccer ball against a wall, go and shoot, go and try and make 100 basketball shots or whatever. It will help your bone strength. 100%. I guarantee it will. And then add walking on top of that. Like, don't do the opposite, which is get in a gym, just do your run once a day, do nothing apart from that. I don't think that's as effective at helping you kind of build resilience to like specific running related injuries as doing some stuff that you wouldn't think of. That's probably a little bit more than what you would think you should do, but it really does help. And I've seen this time and time again with athletes that I coach. And I'm like kind of a big believer as a coach with like experimenting and trying things and not getting, because right now we have like this Instagram culture where there's a lot of experts who fearmonger and they make people scared to try things or to do something that they inherently know sounds and feels right. But they're like, no, I can't do that because these people are telling me that's wrong and I need to go and do some heavy squats in the gym, and I just need to rest in between my runs. I need to reduce my load and build into it really slowly. And I need to eat more. And like these like things that are really in and in vogue and fashionable right now. And they might work and they might be like fundamentally sound, but I'm just not sure they're as effective as some other things that you could do that these same people would recommend you don't do and be a little bit fearful of. And I've seen work a lot. So yeah, whether it's like doing an insane amount of steps, walking or playing ball sport, or going and doing a bit of team sport on the side where you go and train with a sporting team once a week on top of your running, don't be scared of it. Try it. I guarantee it will help.
Yeah, I think it's really good for injury prevention. But one interesting thing too is you might have noticed this, but the Africans, specifically Ethiopians and Kenyans as well, but Ethiopians are especially good at this. They do a lot of really slow, basically hiking in forests where they're running like 6 to 9 minutes per kilometer, and they're going in and out of these really short, tight little loopy trails, and they're almost hiking. I've seen it with my own eyes when I went to Ethiopia in 2019. And what's interesting is when Yomith Kajelcha ran 159, he put out a little bit of content about how he ran 120K a week in the lead up, which was false. But what I learned, well, I tried to understand why there was a discrepancy between this information and information that was coming out of a different, basically his coach, who was saying it was closer to 200K. And what I think I concluded was he's doing a whole lot of work where it's basically like jogging and hiking, like hours and hours and hours of it through the week, where it's really slow. I don't even know if he's actually counting that as mileage. I think he's just counting it as like time on feet, where he's doing like 8 to 12K, but it's probably taking him like almost 90 minutes, where he's just like, and he's basically hiking. Like he's not really even running. And all Ethiopians do this, and a lot of Kenyans do it too. And they're picking these trails where they're almost doing what you just said you should do for like ball sports, but they're doing it in a forest. So like the trails are like 2 meters forward, and then it's like a tight U-turn to like another 3 meters, and then like a 90-degree angle to like another 5 meters. And yeah, it's something that's actually probably quite hard to find in Australia or America or Europe, like actually the right trails to do that. But they've got that in Ethiopia and Kenya. So yeah.
That reminds me a lot of what I was doing in Andorra though, because that Andorra is like where I was living was my apartment was like cut into the side of a mountain, and everywhere where I would walk was like up and down steep single trails, rocky trails. Like it was so technical. So I wasn't just like walking on a like a footpath. It was like in exactly what you just described. And like to your point, David Rudisha, who's arguably the best 800-meter runner of all time. I think he would have been a great miler if he had spent more time on it as well. He's famous for this as well. He walked every single day. He did an interview like 2011, I think it was, where he told the English interviewer that walking was the key to life. And so he would just go out for strolls with like his missus or his training partners. He'd wear like 3 tracksuits at the same time because he was so skinny that he would get cold, and he would just walk. And the interviewer like asked him, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he would just go, he said something along the lines of, I would just walk until I felt like walking no more. And he did it every day. And I don't remember him going through like long periods of injury much in his career. I think he was a pretty resilient athlete. Now, look, maybe there was more going on there that was making him injury resilient, but I still think it's a valuable lesson.
Yep. Yeah, there's so much to this, and it's something that's rarely spoken about. Lots of focus on zone 2 and, all this stuff, which is funny. Just talking about your Instagram, comment before, which is funny. But yeah, mate, no, I think it's definitely something that people can learn, to do more of. But the other thing is a lot of people listening are probably a bit time poor with work and family and stuff, so it can be tricky. But you mentioned something before about in Andorra, like little habits, like instead of driving to the cafe, walk there. Like you can do little things like that are just like, don't go to the full extreme of doing Kajelcha or doing 3 hours a day, but you can do like half an hour or 40 minutes, and that will still make a pretty positive impact, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, 10 minutes here and there is powerful. Like little habits, like you eat dinner, walk for 10 minutes. You wake up in the morning, take your dog for a 10-minute walk. Like, mate, we use the time poor excuse, and there is people who are seriously time poor, like runners or triathletes that have 3 kids and a husband or wife and a job. They're seriously time poor compared to people like me and you. However, they probably still use their phone for 2-3 hours a day. Just replace some of that time. Like, you don't have to go extreme, but just be real with yourself. Like I probably do have an hour I can find most days in like 5 to 10 minute intervals that I could use if I was really motivated to use it. Like if someone came and held a gun to my head and said, you've got to add an extra hour of walking every day for the next seven days or you will die, you could find it. Now you might not want to find it. And I relate to that because I spent 2 years in my bed not wanting to move. Like I did not want to fucking walk to the cafe. And I had a cafe 300 meters down from my house that I would drive to every single day to get a large latte. So I fully get it. But we can all find 10 minutes here and there, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. Good chat, mate. Onto the coaching and marathon specific work. Before we dive into it, take us through your not little, pretty big roster of athletes that you coach, and you got some cool statistics around some top 10 finishes at the Ironman World Champs, which is a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, so I love coaching, mate. When I was an athlete, I realized pretty early on that I wanted to be a coach more than an athlete. Which I think is kind of rare. I think everyone's like, oh, I want to win a world championship and be the best. But like, I was obsessed with coaches. I really loved this guy called Andrew Russell, who was an Australian rules football high performance coach for Port Adelaide at the time. Then went on to the Hawks and Carlton, for those playing at home who know AFL. And I was obsessed with. I'm not as obsessed now because he's a pedo, but I was obsessed with Brett Sutton at the time and his coaching. And as a kid, I didn't really understand that he was a bit of a dodgy bloke, but I loved him when I didn't know that for his training methodology and how different it was and how weird he was. I loved a lot of like the European coaches at the time in like long distance running and cross country skiing, and I was like a 15-year-old kid obsessed with these people, and so I went and did exercise science at uni while I was trying to be a pro athlete and like was like asking all of my friends, like, can I coach you? Can I coach you? Like just coach. I probably have coached like 200 people for free. Some of them for like 3 days, some of them for like 3-4 years, just because I've wanted to learn and grow. And eventually it led me to the point now where I'm like a full-time coach really. And yeah, I got some good athletes in the triathlon world. Like I coached Jocelyn McCauley last year and she came 7th at the Ironman World Championships as a professional. And the year before, coached Penny Slater and she came 7th at the Ironman World Championships. So yeah, 2 years in a row with top 10 finishes in the professional field at the Ironman World Championships. And I coach Ari Klau right now, who he kind of went from being not very good to he's like a pretty big threat in the Ironman 70.3 world, and coach Sam Appleton and Greg Harper and a few other people. So yeah, like that's like my passion. That's what I do day to day. Spend all my time like programming and talking to my athletes and thinking about training, and I'm obsessed with it, to be honest. So that's me, mate.
Yeah. No, I've followed Ari Klau, not super closely on YouTube, but I've watched some of his stuff. I really like his just his style, his personality, and he's entertaining. And I've been waiting. I've been looking forward to seeing his. He's sort of one of those guys that you watch and you know that like right now when I say right now, I mean like 2 years ago, he's not quite there, but you just got a feeling by the way he's talking and he's training that he's going to eventually sort of get towards the top. How do you think he's going right now? Do you see him placing in the top 3 at the 70.3 World Champs in the next 5 to 7 years?
I don't know. Potentially, like he won his first professional Ironman 70.3 5 weeks ago now. So that was like a step in the right direction. And he was on his way to winning like 2 more races this year and had stuff go wrong. Like he was about to beat Lionel Sanders for the first time, and then he suffered some blisters and had to pull out from the race at Ironman 70.3 Dallas earlier in the year. And he's got a big race coming up this weekend at Ironman 70.3 Boise against Vincent Louis and Sam Long, who are 2 of the best in the world at that distance. He's beaten Sam Long the other day at a 70.3 where he came 2nd and Sam Long came 4th. So he's putting together some like performances that they're world class. Like they're not podium at an Ironman 70.3 World Championships level. He's bike and runner. His swim's just still quite a way off that, but he's very arguably, he's probably not the best, but he's definitely inside the top 3 or 4 runners in professional Ironman 70.3 racing, maybe alongside Kristian Blumenfeld and Jelle Geens and Hayden Wild and Morgan Pearson. Like he's in that category of runner, and his bike's very underrated. Like his bike's actually very, very good now. It'd be interesting to see this week because I'm assuming this will come out afterwards, but I wouldn't be surprised if he had a bike time faster than Vincent Louis and in the ballpark of the same time as Sam Long this weekend. And we know Sam Long's, arguably a top 10 cyclist in the sport. He's got the world record for the fastest Ironman 70.3 bike split of all time. So if I can go out and ride as fast as him or, plus minus a minute with him on the weekend, yeah, he's a real threat, bike and run, but swims like a, bag of dog shit. So we got to fix that.
Yeah, getting there. A little bit more chat about triathletes and the marathon and running because I've found this. I've followed triathlon. Well, like I said, last year I've been a little bit off the ball with it, but for the last 5 years, and in part thanks to your podcast, has been very helpful because you've often just, helping everyone follow the narrative well. Before we dive into the specific workouts that we're going to get into towards the end of the pod, but mate, I know it's 6 months on or 7 months on, but Alex Yee, what do you think of that? 206. I did not see that coming when he announced he's doing it. I thought 208, 50, sorry, 208, 30, maybe. Man, 206, crazy.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised, but there's been this thing in the running world and the cycling world for a long time now, and at times in the history of triathlon, it's been pretty justified, where runners look down on triathletes, cyclists look down on triathletes, swimmers look down on triathletes. To be fair, swimmers still can look down on triathletes, but cyclists and runners just can't. Like, there is triathletes right now who are really, really high level on the bike and the run. And Alex Yee is an example of that. But he's not like alone. He's not so far ahead of the game in triathlon that, he's not the exception. There is lots of people like him that could come out and straight away on debut in the marathon break 2:10 in the triathlon world. And
yeah,
I don't know, a lot of runners have had a hard time believing that for a while, but I just guarantee you it's true. Like, take Ari, for example. Ari would run about 209 to 211 if you gave him 6 weeks. He just would. And if you gave Hayden Wild 6 months, he'd run about that as well. If you gave Morgan Pearson 6 to 12 months, depending on if he got injured or not, he'd run a really fast marathon. He'd run a very fast half marathon. Jelle Geens would be the same. Kristian Blumenfeld, Gustav Eden, Casper Stoinis would all be the same. Lassie Nygaard Priester would be the same. We have some seriously world-class runners in triathlon, and same in cycling. Like, if you gave Sam Laidlaw or Rico Bogan some time, Hayden Wild some time, they would make really high-level World Tour cyclists. And they wouldn't be trying to win the Tour de France, but in terms of time trialists and workhorses, they would just be comfortably good World Tour cyclists. So yeah, I wasn't shocked with Alex Yee. I think if he dedicated his time to running full time, he would do some pretty good things. I think he could run a really fast 5K if you gave him a year or two. He seems to not want to do that. He seems to be more inclined to try and do some stuff in the marathon. I reckon he could get down into that 204 kind of ballpark, 204, 205 pretty comfortably by the time it's all said and done. I don't think he'd go much faster than that, but how many white guys do go that fast in their career? So yeah, wasn't shocked. Triathletes have huge foundations of aerobic training. They have a work rate that a lot of runners don't because they've been forced to. So they have been forced for years and years and years to do 20 to 30 hours of training, and they might not have wanted to start. It might have taken them a while to get there, but they've just had it drilled into them so that when they go into running and they're competing against guys who do 10 to 14 to 15 hours of training a week, it's so easy. They feel like they're not doing anything. The only thing that stops them doing more and more and more is that they're scared of injury, but they want to. So like Alex Yee going and doing 15 hours of running a week, or 160K a week, or whatever he chooses to do. For him, it doesn't feel like anything. It feels like he's having rest weeks all the time, and so that's probably the biggest reason, is that they have such huge foundations of aerobic conditioning, and they just take that work ethic and mentality that they get from triathlon, which is a harder sport to train for than running. Like, objectively, it's not. Oh, yeah. That's not my opinion. It just objectively is. So then you go into running and it feels really easy and fun and enjoyable. So it's like maybe why he had so much success, I think.
Yeah, I get the feeling that Hayden Wild and Morgan Pearson, could probably run as fast as Alex Yee with 6 months of specific marathon training. I mean, Hayden, 27:34, was it, at the Tokyo 10K, a little over a year ago? I mean, I'm not sure Alex Yee could have run that fast at the time. It's hard to say. It'd be good to hear your opinion. But Morgan's run a 60:58, I think, half. And Alex Yee ran 61, I think it was 38 in the lead up to his 206. Now, he did say that he didn't get that race exactly right. He probably could have run a bit quicker. But I get the feeling that Morgan, and there's probably others, they're just two that I have noticed carefully, that could probably run 205 if they train for it for 6 months. Morgan especially, and I probably only say Morgan because I've actually spoken to him quite a lot about this. I've never really spoken to Hayden before. I know you know Hayden pretty well, but yeah, Hayden's 10K time was crazy when he ran 27:30, whatever it was, to 34. And I thought to myself, man, like, yeah, I mean, anyone that can run 27:30 and that has, you know, significant endurance background like he does with his cycling could probably run a very, very fast marathon. Now, I'd like to get your opinion on that, but I want to also get to a question which I've asked a few people before, but I reckon you're the best person to ask this. Tell all triathletes, announce right now that there's a marathon going on at the end of the year and there's $1 million for the win. Who's coming first to fifth of all of them? The Ironman, the 70.3 guys, the short course, and how fast they're running.
See, the $1 million is the issue here because triathletes make money, but they don't make $1 million for winning a race. And if you go to them, hey, you've got 12 months, there's $1 million on the line. Unfortunately, we're going to get some boys who start injecting themselves with stuff to make them run faster. It's just going to happen because they're never going to get to experience that in their life. So let's take away the money. Let's say there's no money, but you give everyone 12 months so that there's not a huge incentive for people just to start doping, because that changes shit. And then the answer is, I don't know. But no money on the line. Who in triathlon could run the fastest marathon if you gave him 12 months? I think it would be like a battle of the people I talked about before. So Yalagines could. I think he's injury prone and he doesn't have the training history. So he hasn't had a high mileage training history in his run. So even though he might be the best, like he very well might be the guy who could eventually run the fastest marathon, 12 months wouldn't be enough for him because he'd break down and he wouldn't be able to get the volume in that, say, Alex Yee or Hayden Wild could. Morgan Pearson's the same. I think he has as much potential as Yalagines. I'm worried about him, though. I'm worried about him not quite being able to do the work. But if he could, he might be close. Ari Klau, who I've talked about, and I coach and I'm biased. Trust me, he's very close to the best right now as well. He probably has the most natural ability of the marathon of anyone I've ever seen in my life. So he would be a real threat. Lassie Nygaard Priester is a beast. You probably haven't even heard of him, but he'd be right up there. But I would say it's probably between one of the Norwegian boys, so Kristian Blumenfeld, Kasper Stoiners, Gustav Eden, Hayden Wild, or Alex Yee. They're the five. And then I'd probably have Ari and Morgan and Yalla and Lassie as the next step. Who it would be with them?
I can't see Kristian running 206.
Mate, Kristian is he's the kind of guy that if he really dedicated himself to the marathon, right, and he lost the weight that you would need to run a fast marathon, he's insane. He runs so fast for his body type, like so fast, right? He's already probably the best half marathoner in the world right now. He outran Yalagines and Hayden Wild at Ironman 70.3 earlier in the year in Geelong. He outran Ari Klau at Oceanside. So Kristian ran 107 low off the bike. Ari ran 107.50 off the bike. They were the two fastest runners in that race. He put a minute into Hayden Wild and Yalagines, or 2 minutes actually, at Geelong. So he is fast. And 107 off the bike is fast. Like it's really fast. Morgan Pearson hasn't done that yet. And he's an hour guy fresh. So you give Kristian 12 months and he loses 8 to 10 kilos and dedicates himself to the marathon, I reckon you'd be shocked with what he would do.
Yeah, fair. Okay. Could be right there. I'd love to see Gustav Eden run a 206. That'd be great. I love that guy.
He's good. I don't know if Gustav loves it enough. I don't know if he loves it enough. Like, he's a balanced guy now. He would need to be super motivated for it. If he wasn't 10 out of 10 motivated, I just don't think he would do the work. But if he was 10 out of 10 motivated, he's probably the guy.
Well, Great chat. Apologies to the guys only fixated on running for that last 15 minutes, but I'm sure there's plenty of people listening that also pay attention to triathlon. But I think
We're
now
going
we
to do
can
plenty of
dive
run and
into
chat
the
now. Yeah.
yeah, here we go. Okay, so the great idea that you brought up, which is a simple one, but one that I've not really ever done before, is just talk specific marathon training. And what are some workouts that people could use that you've both, we've both coached other people to essentially included in other people's programs and in our own programs to assist us in the marathon. And we thought we'd both come up with our 6 favorites that we both enjoy, of course, and that are also super effective. And to top it off at the very end, we've come up with 3 little 1%ers that are not workouts that we both feel are going to be beneficial to include in your marathon training, whether it's, doing something additional in training that's not running, or it's something that you can consume, whether it's in the nutrition space that's obviously legal. So I'll let you start off, mate, with a couple of workouts. What are some of the ones that you came up with?
Yeah. So you're going to see a theme to my sessions. I'm a triathlon guy, and I'm a long distance triathlon guy. And something that we do that is quite different to what runners do is we incorporate a lot of volume into our programs. So I think that you'll find that my kind of perception, or like the way I think about how you get the most out of yourself for an event like the marathon, is heavily influenced by my work in Ironman and Ironman 70.3. So the theme of all mine is that they're pretty big sessions. And the first session is like, it's a session that I used to do a lot in my own training. I've taken into my own athletes training. It's not a session I learnt from anyone else. It's kind of one that I came up with and that I still haven't really seen anyone else do, but it's 15 to 25 by 600 meters, and then 30 to 45 second stop rest. And the pace that you do that at, or the amount of reps that you do, varies just depending on who you are, how much you run, what you're trying to achieve in your next race. So if you don't have a lot of experience, if you're not used to big sessions, you probably start at 15, you probably start at 45 seconds rest, and the pace you do it at is probably closer to marathon pace. And then the better you are, the faster you do it and the less rest you take. So for example, you might do, if you're yourself, Matt, if you wanted to do this session, I would say do 25 reps, 600 meters, 30 seconds stop recovery, and do them all at about half marathon pace. Like what current shape you are in for the half marathon. If not, a little bit faster as you go on through the session. So maybe start at current half marathon pace and progress throughout the session to maybe being 3 to 4 seconds a K faster than half marathon pace. It's a big meaty session. You can do it on the track. You can do it on a path. You can do it anywhere. You don't have to do it on a dead flat. Like you don't have to find the perfect path where you can run as fast as possible. You can use effort or heart rate and do it on a rolly path or a slightly undulating trail or something like that. It doesn't really matter. I'm a big believer in like letting RPE dictate what you do in training, whereas marathon runners and runners specifically get really caught up in pace. In triathlon, we don't do that as much, and I think that's a real benefit we have. I think the closer you get to your marathon, the more you should dial into being like, okay, I'm going to run on dead flat paths, and I'm going to really care about my pace and try and get specific. But say you're like 12, 16, 24 weeks out, even a year out from your goal marathon, you can do these anywhere and have fun with them and let RPE take over. So yeah, that's my first one. And I would say that if I was to ever have a session named after me, that's my session. The Jack Kelly running session is 25 by 600.
I like it. I'm going to try it. I'm going to pitch it to my coach to do it this block. I've noticed quite a lot of pros doing, so that would take around an hour for me, maybe slightly more. And I've not ever really done sessions where it's sort of like 2 minutes and then 30 seconds. I tend to do like longer intervals, but they don't quite last an hour. So I like it. I've never really done anything too similar to that, but I've definitely noticed that, for example, Renato Canova, who's probably one of my favorite personalities in running that coaches, he prescribes similar things to this. Very, very long sessions of sort of intervals of around, 90 seconds to 3 minutes. So No, good one, mate. I also really agree with your point about runners being very fixated on pace. And I think that especially when you're like more than 6 weeks out from the marathon, you don't have to be. You can just do it by effort and do it by time. And just if you're not hitting the pace you want, like who cares? Like as long as you're like feeling like it's the right effort, it doesn't matter. All
Couldn't
right, my
agree more.
first.
And on that,
Yep.
just one point on that, do you know what a common mistake runners make is they do too long a specific marathon block, in my opinion. In triathlon,
Mm.
we don't do that. We like, so take the Norwegians. They do a 3 week specific block before the Ironman World Championships, and they dominate it. And everything they do before that is general work, trying to lift their VO2 max, their LT2, their LT1, just trying to get better across the board. And they dial in for 3 weeks where they get really specific. This thing in the marathon of like doing like 12 to 16 weeks specific to one event. Trust me, that ain't it. That ain't best practice. I'd say I agree. I reckon 6 to 8 weeks is the tops I would do.
Mm. Well, I learned that big time in 2024 when we properly started to talk a lot more because I got really 5K fit and then did 8 weeks marathon specific leading up to my first sub 220. And 2 weeks before the sub 220, I did 2 by 10K in 31 flat average. And I argued that I was probably in better shape then than the 219, which was only 6 weeks after I started the block. So yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. Yeah. All right, my first one is a session that I love to do and prescribe it quite a bit. It's quite a long one. 1K on, 1K float. 1K on at half marathon effort, 1K float, a little bit slower than marathon effort. It can be 10K all the way up to 16K. I see Brett Robinson and some of the top MTC guys doing up to 20K, which is very long. I'm not sure if I'd recommend doing that unless you're a very, very high level runner. But I put 16K on the message to you because I feel like that's a good amount for probably a lot of people listening. 12 to 16K, where you're basically doing 1K a little bit faster than your sort of marathon effort, and then 1K a little bit slower than your marathon effort. And you want to be hitting around about half marathon pace, more or less. And then, yeah, your float probably somewhere between 10 and 15 seconds per K slower than your marathon pace. But again, like you've said, don't worry too much about the exact pace and don't even worry too much about being on a dead flat surface. Mix it up a little bit, put it on some rolling hills, even do a bit of a cross-country course if you want, if you're not too close to the marathon. I love this workout. I think there's a lot of value in learning how to recover fast, like running pretty fast and learning how to actually recover, like mentally more than anything. And I've said this a lot before, that if you can learn to recover and feel like you're recovering and still running pretty quick and not far off your marathon pace, it gives you a lot of confidence in a race when you start, if you start to struggle at the end, your brain sort of diverts to this thought of being like, well, I know I can like really, really like still run pretty fast while I can recover. So I think I'm going to be fine if I do start to struggle a bit at the end of a race. So my first one is alternating 1Ks, 1K on, 1K float between, let's say 10 to 16K. Yeah.
I had that exact same session here as my fourth session. I didn't send you mine, so we have doubled up on that one. I love that session. Speaking of the MTC boys, I kind of like spent a lot of my time, and it probably like shapes a lot of what I believe in Ballarat with Steve Monaghetti, and Collis Birmingham was there, and he was obviously a Melbourne Track Club guy and coached there for a bit, and still is a really high level running coach. And he was the first guy I really saw do that session, and he would do it at like 3-ish minute Ks for the on and 320-ish per K for the offs, 310 average type of thing for 20 Ks. So I reckon that's like a pretty like good indicator of how you should do it, in my belief. So like somewhere between 20 to 30 seconds difference for the reps. So if you do the ons at 4 minutes per K, the offs at 420 to 430 is probably pretty good. The less fit you are, I believe the number to change is the slower one, the less fit you are, and the faster one, the more fit you are. So what I mean by that, if you're someone who you think you could go and run 4 to 430 per K for the marathon, I think that you should be making your faster one slower and your slower one faster. Like maybe do the on at 405 per K and the off at 425 per K. Whereas if you're someone like yourself, Matt, I think you should be pushing the faster one for the neuromuscular benefit of that, and making the slower one a little bit slower, rather than like getting caught at 318 per K for like the on and 325 per K for the off. You should probably get like closer to 310 or 305 for the on and closer to 330 for the off. So that's kind of my little point of difference, which I think you probably agree with, but my little thing to add on for that session is the slower you are, the newer you are to running, try and make the slower one faster and the faster one slower. Because the trap you fall into early days is running the fast one too fast and the slow one too slow. Whereas like more experienced runners don't really make that mistake as much. And yeah, so that would be mine. But my second session, Maddie, is 10 by 1.2K at like 1 to 5 seconds per K faster than half marathon pace, with a really short stop rest. So again, 45 to 60 seconds. I don't believe in long stop rests. I hate them because I think they make you run too fast. And I think when you run too fast, that's when injury risk increases. So I like longer, more drawn out threshold intervals at a slightly slower pace with shorter rest. So an example of this session being done poorly or not as well, in my opinion, would be 10 by 1.2K at 5 to 10 seconds faster than half marathon pace with a 90 seconds rest. I don't like that as much as I like 10 times 1.2K at half marathon pace with a 30 to 45 second stop rest. So yeah, that's my next one.
That's a tough one, to be honest. So especially like you're basically running pretty close to 10K pace. Well, yeah, in between 10K and half marathon, 1.2K with 30 to 45 seconds. Yeah, I've done similar sessions before of 10 by 1K and 12 by 1K, and one of my sessions coming up later on is a bit similar to that, but it's actually slightly different with the progression of how it works. We'll get to that later. But yeah, it's a good one. I think that that recovery would get pretty tricky towards the end. But you basically wanted to be keeping to, I'm not a huge lactate guy, but you want to be keeping to right around threshold for those reps. Am I right?
Yeah, you can get above it late for sure. Early for sure. You don't like, yeah, threshold. Think about threshold as like what pace you can run for an hour, 45 minutes to 70 minutes that day if you don't know lactate. And that's pretty much the pace I reckon you should do it at. Like 45 minutes continual all out time trial pace on that day is probably what you should do those reps at. And when you put it like that, you're like, it's actually not that fast because these reps are, for most people, under 4.5 minutes long, and then you get a rest up to a minute. So it's like, it's challenging for sure, particularly the faster you are, the more challenging it gets. But it should be doable for most people if you're fit enough. Probably not a session that I would say you're doing as an unfit runner or early in a block. It's kind of like maybe a session I'd be doing 6 to 10 weeks out from a marathon type thing.
Yep. Yeah, I like it. My second one is a little bit different to what we've been talking about. Not anything faster than marathon effort in this one, but 30K progression. I trained with Rick Rojas for a little while and he loved this session. And I know it's a session that a lot of coaches do. It's pretty simple, where you're basically doing 10K at around about your easy aerobic running pace, which you do on easy days. 10K right in between easy pace and marathon. So it's sort of steady, you could say. So let's just use me, for example. My marathon pace is about 3:18, easy pace is about 4:30. That 10K in the middle is about 3:50, probably 3:45. So it's sort of like not easy, not hard, about a 5 out of 10 effort. And then 10K at marathon effort at the end. It doesn't necessarily have to be exactly the pace of marathon, goal pace. You know, you mentioned before, it's whatever you would probably run that day for a marathon. So that might be 5 seconds per K off your PB pace. But then the beauty of this is you basically have to be running 10K at marathon effort on slightly tired legs. And I think that's something that is really important to practice a few times, running fast on tired legs. There's more extreme ways to do that by doing, say, 40K with the last 5K at marathon pace, but I think this is a good one. I'd probably add on 1 or 2K at the very end of jogging just to cool down as well. So it ends up being a 31 or a 32K run. I don't think it really matters if you do 1 or 2K at the end, but I think that 10K between 20K and 30K at marathon effort is really important. And lately I've become, you brought up Brett Sutton before, who I'd love to talk about at some point, maybe not on this pod, maybe another day, but Brett Sutton's a big fan of like mental training, right? And doing really hard things. I would advise doing this workout alone with no music. So it's boring, really boring, but I think that's important sometimes to deal with that sort of mental aspect. This morning I did 10K threshold and I did it with no music and I did it with a stopwatch. I actually did a Google Maps out and back 5K and I did it on purpose because I want to start practicing doing stuff with no stimulus. Now, do you need to do that? I don't know, maybe not. Like, the crowd of a marathon is pretty good, and maybe if you run with people, you don't really need to, but it does make you mentally tougher, I think. I don't know what you think about that.
I'm not going to talk about that now because you've kind of preempted a point I'm going to make later on in the show. So pencil that in. We'll come back to that. But I got thoughts on that as well, and love that session. This is a triathlon thing as well. I grew up as a runner, so I grew up as a junior runner. I surrounded myself with, people like Steve Monaghetti, like old school traditional Australian runners. I learned the old school way of running. And the more and more I progress in my coaching journey, the more removed from that I get, where I'm not a huge fan of a traditional long run. And with any of my triathletes, I don't do traditional long runs. So no one coached by me goes out and does 90 minutes to 2.5 hours as like a standalone long run in their training program. Like I do all long runs as sessions. So they're like session long runs. So all of these runs I talk about like now are kind of what become our long runs. And the only way I would do a long run as a triathlete in like even kind of a traditional sense is like you just talked about, a progressive long run where you're getting pretty fast at the end. But I never do, like, let's say for you, I would never set you 4:30 per K for 35K. I just don't believe in it. The more I see it, the more I think it's a waste of time. So that's maybe a controversial point I have that a lot of running purists will fucking hate and disagree with. But I also bet you they haven't tried the alternative method. So they're just saying it because it's kind of like, it's like core running principle, right? And I get it. I've been you forever. I would, 10 years ago, I would have said someone was a fucking moron for saying what I just said. So I fully get it. But I do like a progressive long run. That is the exception. My next session is probably just a progression from the session I talked about, but also one I use more year round. And it's just like 6 to 8 by 2K. The pace you would do this, it varies. So the fitter you get, the further you get in the block, the faster you do them. But I think it's a session I like to use year round. So when you're getting back into training, 5 to 6 by 2K is a staple part of my program. Progresses to 7 and 8 by 2K. The fitter you get, the faster you get throughout the year, the faster these get. The less fit you are at the start of the year, or for whatever reason, the slower these get. I think you can do these at marathon pace all the way through to like, I don't know, 5 seconds per K faster than half marathon pace. So like pretty big spread, really. I don't think you should do them too fast. I don't think they're the kind of session you should go and be like, I'm going to try and run these at like 10K pace. I think that's too fast. But again, I like short rests with these. I go with 60 seconds, maybe 70 seconds if people are doing them quite a bit faster than what they're maybe used to. But I think like stock standard session, 6 by 2K, 60 seconds stop rest. I use this year round.
I'm pretty sure that's the one Sweat Elite video that the Norwegians were featured in, which I didn't film. It was another British videographer in Font-Romeu, but I'm pretty sure it was this session. I think it was 6, 5. I might have it wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was 2K reps. It would have been 2023, I think. So Kristian and Gustav and Aaron Royal. It was just before they went 1, 2, 3 at the PTO. I don't know if you remember that.
I've seen that video with Olav Alexander Boo, and they're just running up and down the on the middle of the road at altitude. Yeah, I remember that video. Great video, by the way.
Yeah. I'm certain it was 2K reps, and I think it was done basically exactly how you just said it. So it came to my mind when you were talking about it. So pretty classic workout, that one. I think that's a staple in many, especially pro athletes training. Good one. My next one,
and I think amateur athletes get caught doing 1K reps a lot, like year round. I encourage people to replace 1K reps with 2K reps and make 1K reps less of a staple, more of a treat. 2K reps more of a staple, less of a treat. They're scarier, they're harder, but just slow them down a little bit. Like that's the hardest part. Slow them down a little bit, do a bit more. Rather than doing 6 to 10 by 1K, start doing 5 to 7 by 2K. Slow it down, guarantee you get fitter.
There you go. My next one is maybe arguably not very marathon specific, but I have prescribed it quite a bit lately, and I did it myself in the lead up to my best marathons. So it's actually 3 sets of 8 400s. So a lot shorter than we've been talking and a lot shorter than most marathon specific workouts would be. But I would say this is probably a pretty good workout to add in if you just want to sort of touch on a bit of faster running where you're touching more on sort of VO2 max. I don't really like that phrase VO2 max, but it resonates with people and they know what it means. It's basically above threshold towards the end, but it's 3 sets of 8 400s. And the first set you're having 30 seconds rest. The second set you're having 60 seconds rest. And then the last set you're having 90 seconds rest. And you're getting faster in every set. So the first set, you're running them at about half marathon. The second set, you're running them at about 5K, 10K. And then the last set, you're just running them like hard, like around maybe 3K, mile, 3K. I wouldn't be too fixated on the pace, especially in the last one, but you're getting 90 seconds at the end there. And so, yeah, you're basically doing the first set around sort of what you would call threshold, then maybe a little bit above threshold, and then just really hard. So lactic will spike above threshold, heart rate will get well above threshold at the end there. And yeah, like I said, this is probably a session that you could argue might be more specific to like 10K and half marathon, but I do still think it can be useful in a marathon build, especially if you're someone that feels like you're a bit of a diesel engine and you really lack your ability to turn over any faster than marathon pace or threshold. I think this is a good one to include. And in between the sets, I would jog a lap. Just jog 400, easy, doesn't matter. Classic MTC, Nick Bedeau style, jog a lap, doesn't matter. 3 minutes, 4 minutes, who cares? Have a drink and get ready for the next set. It's a fun one because throughout the session, you're getting faster and faster and faster. And sets of 8 are pretty easy to mentally break down in your mind too, because it sort of gets hard after 4 or 5, and then you just got a few more to go. So it's sort of mentally, we've been talking some sessions that are pretty mentally hard. I would actually say this is actually not a very mentally hard session because of the way that it's structured. Yeah.
Yeah. I think like something that you don't think about as a runner a lot, because I don't know why it gets overlooked, but just the neuromuscular load that is running fast. And a lot of people, like, this diesel engine thing is what made me think about it. Like, that's kind of a myth. And I hate when I hear people say that, like, oh, I'm a diesel engine, or like, I'm really good at running just a little bit slower and I can do it for a long time, but I can't keep up with these faster guys. It's just training. It's just conditioning. So neuromuscular adaptations happen really fast, but a lot of people just get stuck doing the same stuff for a long period of time as runners. So a lot of runners just get really caught up in jogging at roughly the same pace most days, all the time. And they don't really even do that many sessions. And when they do, maybe they don't really challenge themselves that much. Or again, their sessions get capped all year round and they're constantly within themselves. But if you like, and then you go and run fast, like then say you go and run a 5K park run or time trial and you're like, holy fuck, that felt unbelievably fast. Like I was sprinting. I felt like I was sprinting and I just like, I couldn't run any faster if I wanted to, even though like I probably felt like I was aerobically okay, but I just couldn't run any faster. Like, it's a really common thing. That's just neuromuscular. So if you want to run faster, you can. You just have to go and actually run faster. And a session like you just said, that's still probably at the longer end of things, but like just add some strides where you actually run faster. Like do some 400s, do some 200s, do some 150s where you actually run fast, and then progress it up to a session like you talked about there where you actually run fast. And then you'll come back to, like, let's say you do them at 330 per K, and for you, that's really fast. And then you'll go back to running 355 per K and you'll be like, holy shit, this just feels so much easier. Whereas it used to feel like mechanically still like it was really fast. And now it doesn't. Now it feels like more similar to how my 430 per K jogs used to feel, which felt really easily and really comfortable. But then when I'd go and run 350, 355 per K, it felt like I was sprinting. You can make that 350, 355 per K feel like how your 430 does right now if you just go and run faster. And a lot of it's just about forcing yourself to actually run faster because, I don't know, for whatever reason in running, especially as like an adult onset runner, you just don't do that stuff. Like a lot of people who get into running as teenagers or in their early 20s do that. But I don't know, a lot of people who get into running at 25 to 40, just for whatever reason, don't do that because they're scared of injury maybe, or I don't know, as adults, we don't run fast. Like it's something we do as kids or young adults. So I really like that session. I love any session that forces you to make neuromuscular adaptations, because I think it is a really underrated part of becoming a faster marathon runner.
Yeah, people get really fixated on just volume in general, VO2 max and threshold. I think people get really stuck on those things. Like, let's do high volume, lots of zone 2 and lots of threshold. And they're great. Like, they're important. Don't get me wrong. Like, you need those. but people just completely neglect. Like I studied Rory Linkletter's build up to Boston and did like a private podcast about it. And he does 10 200s pretty regularly in like 31 seconds, which is 235 per K pace. So 10 200s, that's a 2K of volume. It's very small. So
yeah, but even the everyday person probably doesn't even have to do that much, right? Like the everyday person could do 200s once a week and it would benefit them. And then maybe progress it to 5 200s once a week. And it doesn't even have to be sprinting. It just, if 4:30 per K is your jogging pace or 5 minutes per K is your jogging pace and your session pace is a minute per K faster than that. So like 3:30 if you're a 4:30 per K jogger or 4 minutes per K if you're a 5 minute per K jogger, just go and do some 200s like 3:10 or 3:30 if you respectively for both of those people. You don't have to sprint them. Just do them at like slightly faster than what your threshold pace would be, like 20 seconds per K faster. Watch how much it makes the threshold and maybe even like 5-10K pace start to feel. My next session. So I did originally have the 1K on, 1K faster, 1K slower, but you've done that. So I'll go to my next two. So my next two are lengthy ones. 3 to 4 by 5K at like roughly marathon pace or like faster than marathon pace, I think is best, but not quite half marathon pace. I like 3 by 5K year round. I don't just like it in a marathon block, which might be a bit controversial. With all my athletes, I use 3 by 5K year round. And sometimes I do it at half marathon pace. Like sometimes I do it as a real, hey, this is a session that's as hard as any race you're going to do this year. And you're going to have to go to the well in it. And sometimes I do it 5-10 seconds per K slower than half marathon pace. I won't really do it much slower than that. Maybe in pre-season, I would do it slower than that, but not in a time when we're getting ready for any racing. So yeah, I do that with like 60 seconds stop rest again, maybe 90 seconds if they're not as fit. I don't ever do jogs between it. Like I know a lot of runners do like 3 by 5K or 4 by 5K with like a 500 to 1,000 meter jog. I don't like it. I don't think you get much out of it. I prefer stop rest for most of my interval sessions, and then just add on volume in the warm up and cool down. So yeah, 3 to 4 by 5K is my next one.
I love that workout. I love 5K reps. They're hard, mental, and I think eventually we might get to it. Even though we better be careful not to make this podcast 3 hours long. I think the mental side of training when it comes to like long, drawn out intervals at marathon or close to marathon is really important. Like Julian Spence, who you know pretty well, he spoke about this really well on one podcast. He was like, at the end of the day, like all these short intervals and stuff are great and they're important, but at some point you have to learn to suffer for a long time in one go. And I think 5K intervals are really good for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Mate, the most underrated skill of being a good runner is just learning how to be in the box for a long period of time. And you can do it by doing sessions like 1K reps or 2K reps to a degree. You got to run them pretty fast, but you can't do it like you can doing 20 to 30K worth of hard running. Like that's just what it requires if you want to be the best you can be at the marathon, or in my case, at the Ironman or Ironman 70.3 distance. Just spending an hour to 2 in the hurt locker. Like, I don't know. Sometimes that's looked at as like old school way of thinking and like, oh, come on, we're better than that now. Like, it's all about intensity control and, you can get really fit if you just do a lot more at zone 2. Like, no. Shut up. Like, shut up. Like, it's just the dumbest thing ever. This sport hasn't changed that much. And the old school way, as Jan Frodeno would say, in a lot of cases is still the best way. And I think in this particular sense, it is still the best way. Don't try and find a secret that lets you think you can replace hard work and suffering in endurance sport, because you're not going to be the best you can be. So every now and then, get in the hurt locker, get there for 20, 30K. I guarantee you it helps.
It definitely helps.
Like even if you're not doing a marathon, mate, even if you're just someone who wants to be the best 5K runner you can, I still guarantee it helps.
I reckon half marathons are mentally as hard as a marathon. But people would disagree with that for sure, but I swear my half marathons have been harder than my marathons in many ways. Like, just maybe I'm not pacing them well, but like every half marathon I've run, at least in the last few years, at like 13K, I'm just cooked. And I'm like, how am I going to do this? 8K to go? Whereas marathons, it tends to be more like the last like 4K. So I don't know, like, yeah, I agree. It doesn't need to be marathon, I think. And even 5K, like if you hit a 5K hard, it's really hard for like 10 minutes, well, maybe not 10 minutes, maybe 6 minutes, 7 minutes. It's a long time to suffer. So yeah, we can
Yeah.
do a whole other
Well,
podcast on mental suffering, but yeah, it's a
mate,
good point.
why do people get into this sport, right? Like people who like endurance sport and are drawn to endurance sport are not normal. Like
No.
they're kind of weird. They like to suffer. They're either like they're doing it for a reason that people who aren't like us don't understand. So why do we then get into it as that kind of personality and then get influenced to change who we are and what drew us into this sport? Like I think every runner in the world relates to really wanting to go out there and work hard and suffer and is more naturally inclined to want to do more, not less. And then they kind of get sucked into this way of thinking of avoiding that. I say embrace it. Like embrace the person that was inspired by watching a marathon on the TV or who saw their friend talk about their training and was like, I want to do that. That sounds fun. That sounds challenging. Don't lose that. That's the magic.
100%. Well, my fourth workout, 12, but this is a simple one. We don't have to speak too long about this one because it's quite basic, but it's similar actually to your 10 by 1.2K, 12 by 1K. So very similar, but mine's a slight progression with 60 seconds rest, starting at marathon and working down to maybe even a little bit faster than 10K at the end. So, you can do this sort of session a few different ways. You can be more like threshold style, sort of more like what yours was, even though you explained specifically not exactly that. But I'm talking more like start the first few reps at around marathon effort and slowly work down to, yeah, maybe even running a little bit quicker than your 10K pace in the last one or two. Yeah, 12's a lot. You could probably stick to 10 or maybe even 8 if you're a beginner or you're someone that's sort of just a few years into running. But 12 by a K is one that I quite like to do, minute standing rest or just walking rest. Seen quite a lot of people do this, and I've done it quite a few times as well. Did it in the lead up to Chicago, where I started at about 3:15 and worked down to like 2:55 in the last one. So everyone just got about a few seconds quicker, maybe 2 or 3 seconds quicker. And I just found it really fun too. Like I think that's important as well. Olav Alexander Boo talks a lot about how it's important for people to just really enjoy their training as well. It's a really underrated thing, even though it's quite basic. So I enjoy just getting faster every rep, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. And this is one where you can do that. So, yeah.
Love it. Yeah, I don't think we need to touch on too much with that. Like, that's just classic, right? That's classic. It's maybe a little bit more threshold way of thinking, like on the side of it, whereas the classic approach is probably like 5 to 8 by 1K reps, right? Like that's kind of classic runner is to go out and do 5 to 8 by 1K reps once a week, every week, and do them pretty fast. Whereas the 12 or even like 10 to 12 is probably more, hey, do them slightly slower, maybe work into them, progress them like you talked about, or don't progress them and just keep them right at around threshold. That's probably, I don't know, it's like what a lot of runners would think of as like the Norwegian method to training. Probably, I think it's just like in triathlon, that's just been a session forever. I don't really associate that with like the Norwegians per se, even though they do a lot of that stuff. So yeah, it's kind of like maybe a more modern running take on a classic session. Like I talked about earlier with what 1Ks and how I program them, I sprinkle them in as a treat, not as a staple, because I do agree. I think it's one of the funnest sessions you can do. I find 1K reps so much easier than 1.2K reps for some reason. I don't know why that extra like 20 to 30 seconds matters, but fuck, it matters. And I find them a lot easier than 2K reps. So I reckon 1K reps are like the funnest session there is. So yeah, I kind of use them more as like say I have an athlete doing an Ironman 70.3, which is a half marathon. I'll do 1K reps in like the 4 weeks leading in, but not really at any other point throughout a program. My next session, this is a bit of a crazy one to most people probably, but I'll give you some different variations of what I think of as the same session. So the probably most insane version of this session is 12K, 11K, 10K at marathon pace, all with somewhere between 60 to 120 seconds stop rest. Sometimes you do a bit more because you go to the toilet or you go take a shit or refuel and walk to your car or something. It ends up being 3 to 5 minutes between reps. Also fine, by the way. That's the most insane. Probably through to like the least insane version of it, which is like 9K, 8K, 7K. That's the range. You could do anywhere in between that. So it might be 3 by 10K, 3 by 9K, 9K, 8K, 9K, 12K, 8K, 12K, but it's a long period of time at marathon pace. Now, something that I think triathletes, and Alex Yee did this for sure, would bring to the marathon that a lot of Western marathoners or Western running coaches and athletes don't do is a long, long, long interval session at marathon pace. With runners, you often see them cap out at somewhere between 20 to 25K at marathon pace. So like traditional runners, or like maybe like what has become kind of the standard approach to marathon specific sessions in running lately in the last 5-10 years is stuff like 4x5K, 5x5K, 4x6K, 3x7K, up to 4x7K at like the extreme end. But in that kind of like 20 to 25K at marathon pace. And I think that's not enough. The marathon's 42K. And for some reason, runners are scared to get anywhere near that unless it's in an easy long run. Maybe like a long run where they do 30K and then do some session at the end. But like triathletes would bring in 35K at marathon pace into their marathon training. And if triathletes all had to stop doing triathlon tomorrow and all had to start doing the marathon, that would be the biggest change that would happen in the marathon world. And I guarantee you, as a result of triathletes doing it, it would become more standard. But yeah, like 25K at the bare minimum, up to like, seriously, up to like 40K at marathon pace is this session. Break it up however you want, but don't do more than 4 reps. So do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
maybe if you're real extreme, you might do like 4x10K. I think that's kind of crazy, but like 3x10K or 12K, 11K, 10K, that's the biggest I do it at. So that's obviously like 33K or whatever. But yeah.
Okay, I've got a question here. Your workout reminded me of one of the craziest things I've ever seen, of which you've spoken about quite a few times on your pod in great humor. Gustav and Kristian doing 40K before they dominated Kona in 2023, 2022. Yeah. Now, that was a wild workout, 6 days before, which when I first saw it come up on Strava, and I think a lot of people also would have thought, like, is this real? Or is this like a joke on Strava? Okay, so they did that at their Ironman pace, which is different. No?
Faster.
Okay. Because if those guys did a marathon in 2 weeks after that, they would have probably run like 2:12, which would have been a very different pace to the pace in which they did it at, right? So these workouts you're talking about, is this an Ironman marathon pace or actual marathon pace? Because they're different, and you can explain how they're different. Yeah.
Yeah. So the story of Kristian and Gustav, so Ironman World Championships at Kona 2022, 7 days out. So the race is on a Sunday. The Sunday before the race, I'll tell you about the weekend. So the Saturday before, so 8 days out, they did a long ride with a lot of specific stuff, like a lot of like 4 or 5 hours with a long period of time spent at Ironman bike power. So really hard session. They did a long open water swim as well. The next day they came out and they did a 2-hour bike ride, again with some specific work. And then they went into a 40K run with about 30K of that faster than their goal Ironman marathon pace. Slower than what they would do as a standalone marathon pace, but like around 3:25 to 3:45 per K. And they went on to do the marathon at about 3:45 per K off the bike. So it's, 20 seconds faster per K than that, up to like right back to at Ironman marathon pace. So yeah, that's 7 days out they did that, whereas a runner would never do that. Like it wouldn't cross a runner's mind to do a massive session like that 7 days out. They'd think that's crazy. And their coach at the time, Oliver Alexander Boo, who they're not coached by anymore, by the way, but they were coached by at the time, said, well, if you can't do that seven days out, like if you're not fit enough to do that session 7 days out, you're not fit enough to win the Ironman World Championships, which just speaks to their way of thinking.
Pretty simple.
That kind of makes sense, I guess. I don't know. I still think they're fucking crazy, those guys. So that's just become staple now. So they at the 2025 Ironman World Championships, they clean swept the podium. So Casper Stoinis, he wasn't there in 2022. It was just Gustav and Kristian, who, by the way, Gustav won the race. Kristian Blumenfeld came third. So they came first and third 7 days on from doing that session. Last year, they did the same thing. They did it both weeks. So they did it 14 days out and then 7 days out. They actually did it 21 days out as well. So they did 3 weeks of specific work, and that was their specific. They didn't do anything before that. They did a big they call it their Super Sunday. So they did a big Sunday, 21, 14, and 7 days out from the race, and they came first, second, and third. And so Casper Stoiner's, he ran like 2:28 for the marathon of 180K in the mountains on the bike, which to runners will not understand how insane that is. That is like, it's crazy, mate. Like, I reckon in that shape, they all definitely would have broken 2:10 fresh on that day. 100%.
I believe that. Definitely believe that.
Without question. Again, some running purists would probably roll their eyes at that, but I promise you they would have. And so in last year they did 3x9K as the big session. At Kona in 2022, I think they did a bit more than that, more like 3x10K. So yeah, this is kind of pretty standard for their program.
There you go. Yeah, the most I've ever done at marathon pace is 2x10K. Yeah, no, I've definitely heard of people doing upwards of, I think Spence talked about doing 25K once. I could be wrong. I might be thinking of someone else, but no, they're big workouts, mate. And I think that, yeah, you can't get much more specific than that, right? doing so much volume at marathon effort or goal pace. All right,
do you think that that's something the running world will eventually do? Like, do you think that, because I think the Kenyans do it.
Yeah, and the Kenyans do it. That's a Canova. That's sort of a very Canova style workout. I mean, so Renato Canova is one of the best sort of elite marathon coaches in the world. Has coached something like 40 people to sub 205, I think. And maybe the same amount of women to sub 220 or sub 222 it could be. And he does 40K straight at like 96% of marathon pace. I think 3 or 4 weeks out. And so he basically says, you should be able to run 40K you should be able to run 40K in the time you want to run the marathon in, if that makes sense. So if you want to run the marathon in 2:08, you should be able to run 40K in 2:08. 3 weeks out.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's crazier than what I'm talking about.
It is crazy.
If you think about it.
Yeah.
That's crazier. And I don't know, mate, I know we talked about the Kenyans with the walking thing, and it's like, well, how can I pick and choose with saying that that's great advice? And then I'm about to say, like, mate, the Kenyans fucking dope, right? Like, it's insane how many Kenyans have tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs in the last 5 years. Like, the numbers of over 200 people, right? So
yeah. I
think we have to preface everything when it comes to Kenyan marathon running with being like, we're probably talking about people who are doing performance-enhanced sessions. And so you can do more and you can recover more from it. And me, a white person in Australia who's not taking any performance-enhancing drugs and never has, probably can't go out and do fucking 40K at 96% marathon pace and get away with it. Like, let's call a spade there. And look, Canova might have coached people and probably has coached clean people who have done that. But I just reckon the ratio of people who break from that clean is much higher than the ratio of people who break from that dirty. So little caveat, but yeah, I do think it will like find its way into running culture where like every 5 to 10 years, what was once looked at it as a lot of time spent at marathon pace will not be in like the modern training world. So I reckon if you fast forward to like 2035, 30 to 35K at marathon pace will be pretty standard. Whereas if you go back to 2010, I don't know how many people were doing more than 20K at marathon pace. So I think that will be like a natural progression in the marathon training world over the next 10, 20 years.
Yeah, especially with shoe technology and better nutrition, these things will help recovery a lot. So yeah, that'll allow people to do more work for sure. My fifth one is 5K, 4K, 3K, 2K, 1K, all at marathon with 1K float. So pretty straightforward. Yeah, you're basically doing a total of 15K there at marathon effort. So not quite what you're talking about. But I do think towards the end of those reps there, especially when you get down to the 3K, 2K, 1K, you can definitely push it faster than marathon. So get down to half marathon and maybe even that last K, let it rip. Just do a really fast 1K at the end. Don't get too stuck. I'm not a big intensity control person, even though I do understand that you have to be a bit careful sometimes and don't go crazy every second day. But at the end of this session in the 1K, if you feel good, just do a really fast 1K, even get down to like 5K pace at the end. But the 5K, 4K, try and stick to around that marathon effort. And the 1K float should also be honest. Kristian Ulrichsen, I think Kristian Ulrichsen came up with that. Be honest with the 1K float. Keep it steady. Don't jog. Don't even run easy. Run it sort of 20 to 30 seconds per K slower than marathon. So you're not really recovering. But yeah, that's a good solid 19K session. I've done it a couple of times. I love it, and I think I want to do it in this next build. Yeah.
I kind of had a smile on my face when you said that, because I literally programmed this for an athlete yesterday. Exact session, but I didn't do the floats, that's the big difference in my programming to like traditional running is I don't do floats. I don't even do jog recoveries. Hate them. I think because like take that session you're talking about there. I think that if you do the floats, that's a big session. Whereas if you don't do the floats, it's 15K with like some rest in between. It's not as demanding, right? And I do think that the way you can get more time at threshold or just below threshold into a session is by eliminating the jog or the float between it, that make the session, in my opinion, and in my experience, so much harder. Like, I just find that so hard. If you do, like, let's say like a session like that, where you go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you do a K float in between it. What would you say out of 10? Like, if I said do that same session, exact same paces, cut the float, make it a 15K session, not a 19K session, and do it at the exact same paces. Out of 10, what is the RPE of the stop rest session version of it versus the float version of it?
Well, the RPE might not change. It might just be a case whereby the reps become slightly faster if you're not floating, perhaps.
No, I'm saying do it at the same pace.
Oh, sorry, same pace. Oh, sorry, I misunderstood. Oh, yeah, it's definitely a notch faster with the floats. Look, I don't really know why exactly I've become a big fan of floats. Some coaches love them. Some think that they're a waste of time. I've heard that before. Canova, I think, does it occasionally. But I just, for some reason, I feel really confident when I can float fast. It's like a mental thing for some reason.
What about this though? Because like, to answer that question I just asked you, I think it's like, seriously, it might change it from being like 7 out of 10 to 9 out of 10. I think that's how much harder it makes it.
Probably.
And
yeah.
I'll just say this. What if you did the same thing, but instead of doing the floats, why don't you change the session to this? 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, for example, cut the floats. That way you get more time at the, whatever the pace is, threshold, whatever word you use. And then like you're getting that same duration, the same volume in the session, but you're actually doing it faster. And I think it's like on an RPE scale, it's quite similar to doing like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 with a float. But I feel like the float becomes a bit of like, it's not here, it's not there. And I just would prefer to see you do more slightly faster with some stop rest to make it a bit easier. I just think you can accumulate more time at quality. So yeah, I think the sessions that with the floats make you feel good because they're fucking hard, Matt. So you just get really good at suffering. But I just think you can make training a little easier on yourself and get a little bit more quality. And if you scrap floats or scrap jog recoveries to get the extra duration, and instead take stop rest and do a little bit more volume in the actual session.
I might have to take a bit of a relook at my whole float idea. Where did I get it from, and why am I doing it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Lots of coaches don't do it, to be honest. Many of them don't. So
I used to, for the record. I swore by it. Got to jog your recoveries. Even in 1K reps, got to jog your recoveries, jog everything. Because what I grew up in, it's what I was like drilled into me, like, don't stop. That's weak, it's soft. I just noticed with all my athletes, they started running better when I started giving them stop rests for every single thing. I scrapped all floats, all jogs, and I started getting less injured athletes. I started getting faster athletes, and I was like, I think I'm onto something here. And yeah, I've probably been doing it for like 2 years now, and they've been the best 2 years of results I've gotten as a coach. I don't know, it could be a coincidence. Like, there's obviously lots of other factors, but it's a part, I reckon.
Interesting. All right, you got one more, I think?
Well, not really. I kind of. That's kind of me done.
Okay.
Yeah, I would add like some variations to my first one of 15 to 25 by 600. I like 20 to 30 by 400 reps as well, which is not a very runner's session, but it's a session I do all the time. Like Ari, he would probably. We kind of don't talk about a program. We like to keep some stuff secret, but we did 30 by 400 meters in this build into Ironman 70.3 Boise, and he did them fast, 30 to 45 seconds recovery during it. I would even consider doing up to 40 by 400 as a session, as crazy as that sounds, but just drop the pace right back. So it sounds like a lot because we're so used to 400 reps being fast, but these aren't fast. They're actually very manageable with pace. They're really in control. And then you get a 30 to 45 second rest and you feel really fresh doing this session. It's just a long time doing it.
Yeah. And it's just a bit of doing a lot of laps of a track in general can be a bit mentally challenging, but 3400s is 12K. So if you think 12 by 1K isn't crazy, then I don't know why 30 by 400 is crazy. They're the same, really.
Because it sounds like 30 reps of anything sounds like a lot. And I also don't like doing it on a track, Matty. I like doing it on a path. Like, say if you had just a long out and back, that's what I do. 15 out, 15 in, something like that.
Yep, I like it. Well, I'll round off with probably one of the more, similar to your session of the 12, 11, 10 or 9, 8, 7. But this is one that I give most people in their marathon builds with 2 or 2.5 or 3 weeks to go, depending on their job or what they're doing exactly. 2 by 10K, 1K recovery. Based off what you just said, maybe you could even scrap the 1K recovery. I probably don't think it would really matter if you scrap the 1K recovery. You could just do 2 by 10K with a standing 3 minutes rest. I actually don't think it matters. The 2 by 10K marathon goal pace, and I only say that because I think this session is really good to add 2 weeks out. If you're Kristian and Gustav or really experienced, maybe you could do it even closer. But I think practicing your exact pace in which you want to run the marathon at is really good in this session. Long suffering, we're talking 31 to 45 minutes for everyone there, probably listening. And it really goes back to that point that we sort of keep touching on of you have to learn to suffer for a long time in the marathon, especially in half marathon. So this is a good opportunity to do that. And if you have the balls, do this on your own with no music because it's not easy and you will want to stop, especially in the middle of that second rep. You will want to stop and you have to do everything in your power to not stop and get through it and try to hold that pace. So that's one that I love to do. I get really excited for this one, which probably means I'm a psycho because it's so hard, but I love it. And a lot of people I coach love it too. So 2 by 10K at marathon goal pace with either 1K rest or just 3-4 minutes standing.
But a saying that I think is important as a coach is perception is reality. So whatever the athlete you're coaching perceives to be the case is reality, whether you agree with your athlete or not. So if an athlete thinks something is doable, it's doable. If they think something is undoable, it's probably undoable. So part of triathlon is everyone's pushing their training, right? And I think it's starting to infiltrate marathon running as well, where everyone's just trying to outdo each other. And that's why we're seeing this crazy increase in marathon times. Running shoes have helped, super shoes have helped, fueling's helped. But I think an underrated part of what's changed in the marathon world is everyone's trying to outdo each other. Everyone's hearing all these crazy shits everyone's doing. So everyone's doing crazier and crazier shit. That's been happening in triathlon for a long time. And that session you're talking about is really hard the first time. And it's easier the second time. And it's easier the third time. And it's easier the fourth time. Until a year on, when you could probably do 2 by 15K, and it's easier by a lot than the first time you did the 2 by 10K, because perception becomes reality when it comes to these sessions. So if you think it's fucking long and Jesus, that's I don't know how I'm going to finish this, you're going to struggle. Whereas if you just suffer through a few and then you get to the point where you're 2 by 10K, that's nothing, then you could maybe do 2 by 11K and 2 by 12K. And your reality or your perception of the session just changes and changes and changes. And then your reality changes and then your performance changes. So I do think a big part of that session that you've just described is just sucking it up and doing it. And then sucking it up and doing it again and again until in 2 years' time, you look at 2 by 10K as just a really fun session. Not even that challenging.
Yeah, I must say I've gotten to that point now because I've probably done it about 6 times. And when I did it the first time, it was a nightmare. Even the second time, it was a shit show. And the last 2 times I've done it, it's sort of how you've just described it. It's okay, this is kind of fun. It's still hard, don't get me wrong. In the last 3K, I want it to end, but I get excited for it. And getting into that second rep, I'm just here we go. Let's get after this. Looking forward to this. And I also didn't point on something which I think you probably agree with. This is also a good workout to really practice your fueling as well. really specifically dialing in exactly what you want to do in the race. It's almost like a dress rehearsal in a way, a little bit of the race, but it's just 20K rather than 42K. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
It's a good one. And a lot of pros do this too, a lot of professionals. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that I think like the large majority of these sessions are great opportunities to practice fueling.
Yeah,
And I do
true.
think that it's like a part of running now. It hasn't always been. This is, again, something that's been in triathlon a little bit longer than running, that you really don't want to get to race day and not be like super competent at your fueling strategy. So I think like the more frequently you can practice your race day fueling, the better. And I don't really believe in just saving it for your marathon block or your specific sessions. I think that you should be trying to do it year round almost, or very close to, with some like really key sessions where maybe you get a bit more professional with it and use like the same bottles or whatever, like or maybe like practice grabbing it from a table that you've put on the side of the road and that kind of thing. But yeah, I do think year round you should be practicing your fueling strategy. Is just a little add-on I would have there. Love it, mate, though. I would just challenge you that, okay, you've done 2 in a row now where it started to feel pretty normal. Maybe it's 2 by 11K that you have to do, or maybe it's 2 by 10K a little bit faster. But I would encourage you to not lose how you used to feel about 2 by 10K by the comfort of how you now feel about 2 by 10K. Don't let yourself just become comfortable in that session. Progress it eventually to 3 by 10K. You know, like try not to lose the fear is what I would advise.
Funny you say that, because I had the idea of doing 15K, 10K maybe next.
Love it. Love it. It's aggressive. It's an aggressive jump, but if it scares you, go for it. But
It does
I would
scare
just
me.
say just
The 15K scares me a bit.
I love it. I love it then. But yeah, as long as you feel like, okay, I'm really competent in this 2 by 10K, I don't fear it at all anymore, make the jump.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice one, mate. Well, we also thought we'd come up with 3, just to round it off, 3 little 1%ers that we feel can be beneficial to your training or racing. What do you come up with?
So my first one, I'm huge on sleep. So when you're coached by me, from literally the day I start working with you, you will get lectured on sleep if your sleep isn't up to scratch. I obsess over how my athletes are sleeping, to the point where, so we have race week this week, Ironman 70.3 Boise. It's a big race in the triathlon world in North America. And I've got 3 athletes racing it. And I have messaged all of those athletes every day and asked them about how their sleep was the day before. And I'm just big on them. Like, how many hours of sleep did you get last night? Were you a professional in how you prepared for bed last night? Did you do everything to ensure that you could? I'll drill these habits into them leading into a race. Like, take Ari Klau, for example. He was horrific with this when we first started working together, and it took me a long time to get him good. But now he's in bed at 7. He's asleep by 8 p.m. He's getting 10 to 11 hours sleep every night on race week, all week. You know,
Wow.
like he's obsessed with it. And he's obsessed with it because I'm obsessed with it. And I drilled it into him. He, in the past, 2 years ago, he would have, like, mate, he'd be up at 12 at night, 1 a.m., you know, and then the next night 9:30 and the next night 11:30, and I hated that. And he'd be, you know, sleeping in till 9 a.m. when his race morning he's going to be up at 3 a.m. and then wondering why he feels fucking terrible on the race start line. Well, yeah, mate, you haven't been up like within 3 hours of when you're starting your race. How do you expect to feel good? So something that I think that everyone can work on is their wake up time. What time do you wake up, and how close do you wake up to the day before and the day before and the day before? So, like, how close is the time you wake up over a consistent period of time? It matters more than what time you get to bed, in my opinion. And there is a little bit of research on this, although sleep research is kind of shady when you actually delve into it. Like, there isn't a lot of great sleep research. There's some sleep research that makes you think certain things are absolute fact when then you dive into the research and you're like, I'm not so sure that is absolute fact, or that we know as much as what you might think we know. I think sleep is an area we actually are still like really uneducated on as humans in general, and it's because studying it is really, really hard. But something that I have anecdotally noticed through like case studies of my athletes and myself is that the more consistent you can be with your wake up time, the better your sleep quality will be. And I've also noticed that even if you go to bed at the same time every night, if you're waking up at different times, sleep quality is worse. I don't know why. I've got theories as to why, but I have noticed without doubt at this point that if, say, you're someone and you wake up at 6:30 a.m. and that's when you like to wake up, try to not sleep until 8:30 and then have mornings where you're up at 4 as best as you can. Just try and be really consistent. 6:30, 6:30, 6:30, 6:30. I guarantee you your sleep quality will improve. You'll start to fall asleep more easily the night before. And you'll find that if you do wake up a little bit earlier and a little bit more consistently a bit earlier, you'll find that you want to go to bed earlier that night and end up getting more sleep anyway. And so yeah, my first like little 1% that you might not be thinking of is just try and wake up at a really consistent time as often as possible.
Mate, I'll tell you a wild story off the back of that I learned in my detention time in Japan. So I'm typically a pretty average sleeper, 6.5, which I feel fine on, to be honest. But in Japan, 9 p.m. bells, got to go to sleep, lights out, and they actually come around, and if you're doing something, they tell you to go to sleep. It's kind of weirdly strict, even though in the day it wasn't strict. 7 a.m. lights to wake up, so good 10-hour chunk of time. And because I had no devices, nothing in there, couldn't reply to your messages. Towards the end of my stint, I was sleeping 10 hours straight because I was forced to. I had no option, and I had no. I have an addiction to my phone, like we all do. I'm always on Instagram and all these apps. Didn't have that, and towards the end of my 4 months, I was punching 10 hours, and I even was so tired that when the bell went off at 7, I wanted to keep sleeping. I wasn't allowed. They were like, "You got to get up." I'm like, "I want to sleep more." They're like, "No, you can't." So I revolutionized my sleep. I haven't exactly taken all those lessons back home with me. I'm still struggling from time to time with sleeping, but that was a lesson for sure. I had these bells that I couldn't move away from. And at the end, I was like, how am I doing? I'm sleeping 10 hours straight. I've never done this in my life. So, yeah.
You know, the irony of this, Matty, is that you got put in a Japanese prison for a large chunk because you were relying on weed gummies to fall asleep at night because of your anxiety and your addiction to your phone. And as a result of being put in jail for taking these little gummies that you were so fucking hooked on to help you fall asleep at night and reliant on, that you imported them into a country that is notoriously strict on it, all to try and help you run a faster marathon through your sleep, which is sound logic. Like, the sleep's going to help you run a faster marathon, and you're addicted to them and you're hooked on them because they help with stress relief at night. And in this process of being locked up in that jail cell, you actually found out you didn't need them to fall asleep and to get these good nights of sleep. So, like, weirdly, they really rehabilitated you, and they actually fixed the problem for you, which is like, it's a crazy, ironic point of the entire experience, really, isn't it? That the thing that you got locked up for was the thing that they helped you fix in the jail.
I wish I had my Garmin or a Whoop on me during that time. I would have been punching 100 sleep scores every night with no substances whatsoever. So there you go.
So are you back on? Are you back on taking the gummies before going to bed now?
Nah, I take them occasionally. I shouldn't probably say that because in Australia, you can medically get them in Australia now. No, I don't. I don't take them consistently. I take them like once a month just for a bit of fun with the wife or a friend. But no, I don't take them every night. No.
Yep.
Well, my first one is, and I appreciate you bringing. I haven't actually shared that publicly, the sleep thing, but it was very ironic, and you've tied it up well there with the whole. I was struggling with this, and Japan's like, "We'll teach you exactly how to fucking do this. Here you go." My one
Mate,
is
way more relatable than you think as well. Fucking like, I reckon if you went back to our grandparents' time, they didn't struggle with sleep nearly as much as we do. I reckon 95% of people listening to this. Yeah, mate. I've been through so many phases in my life now where I fucking need to like watch shit to fall asleep and listen to shit. Like, it's insane.
Mate, I listen to you to fall asleep, mate. I put you on the podcast.
Yeah, no girl I've ever been with has struggled to fall asleep, mate. With me talking next to him in bed, they're out like a light.
Oh, funny. All right. Well, I've actually got to round up in the next 10 because I got to go on a bike ride. But we'll get to my first 1%er, and that is something I discovered a couple of years back with recovery. And I'm not super sure exactly how powerful this was because I was having a recovery cocktail, you could say, not in one cocktail. That's not the best way to put it. I was having protein, carbs, ketones, and creatine straight after workouts, and I'm sure that the creatine and the ketones, exogenous ketones, were helping recovery. Now, I think you've spoken a bit about this. Cyclists have used them for ages. There's been a time where we've thought that ketones are actually better before workouts. I don't think that's really true. I think it's more around recovery because of the glycogen uptake and enabling more of it, I think. But I still do this, especially with the creatine. I sometimes run out of ketones and forget to buy more ones because I buy them now. But I think that's something that helps. I think creatine especially. People go away from creatine because of the weight gain. I'm fortunate that I don't get that, but a lot of people do, so that's unfortunate. I don't really know what to do about that part. But yeah, ketones and creatine, but the carbs are the key there, I think, for sure, as soon as possible after workouts. In fact, Kristian said in a podcast, can't remember which one it was on. It wasn't on your one. It was on a different one. And he was asked, what's the biggest key to training that people overlook? And he's like, carbs straight after workouts, no brainer. And I was like, wow, yeah, that's really basic. Yeah.
Yeah. And as soon as possible after the workout as well is like, the research suggests that's not actually as important and that there isn't this like urgency window, but fuck, all my lived experience with athletes suggests that research is bullshit. I think there is an urgency window. I think like, I just talked to Alana Siffert, who out of nowhere, one challenger off, dropped 20 minutes on a marathon off the bike PB. Her PB was 3 hours. She then went and ran 2 hours and 40 at Roth. But she said that something she did in a training camp leading in for like 4 months was that she was living in a place where there was food prepared on site. So she would like finish her session and she'd be eating within like a minute after finishing, which was something really new that she'd been doing. And I think it's super important. And on the ketone point, yeah, that's been in triathlon for ages now. In fact, triathlon was what popularized ketones, and people like Cam Worth and Sam Long, they're still big proponents of it. They do it a lot post training, and to the point they're invested in fucking ketone companies and stuff, and have equity shares in ketone companies because they're such big believers. So yeah, that's pretty prevalent in the triathlon world. With your water, how many like liters, or for your American listeners, I don't know, what do they use? Ounces, gallons? How much are you drinking per day?
I don't really count it. I don't really track it. About 2 liters, 2.5 liters, but it depends a lot on like how hot it is outside and how much I'm sweating in workouts. If it's warm outside in Australian summer, especially in Queensland, it'll be way more than that. Because if I do a long workout, I'll probably consume 2 liters like within an hour of the workout. So I don't know. I wouldn't be able to give a very accurate answer to that, to be honest. I'm not sure. Yeah.
The reason why I ask is because the people who struggle with creatine are people who drink a lot of water. So
yeah, see, I do not do that.
I knew as soon as you said it, that, you're like, oh, I'm like, I don't know why I'm one of those people who doesn't. I went straight away because you don't drink much water, and then you say 2.5 liters. Yeah, that's fuck all water for an endurance athlete. So if you're someone who drinks 4, 5, 6 liters of water a day, you're gonna fucking put on weight on taking creatine, and you're gonna look puffy in your face, and you're gonna see a number that's high on a scale. You're not putting on any weight at all. It's just you're just retaining more fluid. So yeah, that's the only reason why. It's not that you're someone who doesn't put on weight using creatine, or even if you are someone who thinks you're putting on weight, you're not putting on weight. You're just retaining more fluid. So if you don't want to do that, drop back the amount of fluid you're drinking. But I don't advise that. I think keep drinking a lot of water, but just realize that that's the reason why, and keep taking creatine. Creatine's awesome. My second point is a supplement as well. It's Nomio. Mate, I'm such a believer. I
Everyone loves it.
Mate, it is fucking magical. And the Triathlon Hour, the podcast I host, is sponsored by them now. The reason why is because I started using it with my athletes midway through last year, and I was buying that shit and it's expensive, and I wanted a discount code. So I reached out to them and said, hey, can I get a discount code for the podcast? TTH15 if you want to get Nomio. You can get that on their European website. No, it's like I don't get any money from it. I literally get nothing from it. But if you want to buy it, if you want to try Nomio for yourself, get 15% off TDH15. It fucking works, mate. It fucking works. It's unbelievable. And here's I use it a little bit differently with my athletes. We use it all the fucking time. So throughout a week, take Ari Klau. We've talked about him a lot. So this week, I don't really want to give this away. We use it a lot, and we think it's a secret that we have. We use it far more than what people think you should. Like a lot of people just use it like 3 hours before a session.
Easy runs?
Mate, we use it all the fucking time, and it improves sleep quality. It improves digestion. We're finding that we're backing up day-to-day sessions so much better, and people think it's bullshit. They just go, oh, yeah, whatever. Like, hey, if you want to believe that, believe that. We've been doing, I make money off them now. Very little amounts of money, by the way. They have no budget. They're not that big a company. We make 1,000 or we make fuck all money off it. But we've been using it before that, and I would use it. I would promote it in the same way. I would tell people about it. In fact, I started talking about it and telling people about it on my podcast far before I had this discount code from them, or far before they paid me $1,000 to talk about it for on the podcast. Because it works, and we've tested it time and time again. We've seen that it works, and we use it a lot. So I couldn't recommend it enough. It's the one supplement, and I feel bad about saying this because I'm a believer in creatine. I'm a believer in protein powder. I'm a believer in zinc and vitamin D, B12 for some athletes, fish oil for some athletes. I do think there's some supplements that are great, but Nomio is the one above all. And look, there's a reason why so many athletes use it who aren't sponsored by it. And I know the athletes that they pay, and it's almost no one, mate. They barely pay anyone. But if you look at the amount of people that use it, like 99% of them, professionals, aren't getting a single cent from it. They're using it because it works. So that might have sounded like an ad. It's not. No, I don't give a fuck. Don't use my discount code. But
no,
try.
I believe you, because a lot of people I coach are raving about it now. So I need to try it. I mean, I've got marathon coming up in 11 weeks in your hometown, Melbourne. But yeah, I've actually asked the wife last week to try and make it herself, like break down the ingredients, but then I read into it and it looks really hard to do, so I might scrap that idea.
Yeah. I mean, mate, like, go on.
Only because I just want to make it in bulk. Yeah, maybe a bit of a cost saver, but like I kind of had the idea of actually doing like what you're talking about with Ari, and just like having it like every day, like all day. I'm like, maybe I'll just save hundreds of dollars at this point if I do that. But yeah, I don't know.
If you figure out how to do that, let me know, because that's interesting. Like my experience of trying to make supplements like that, like even with carbohydrate, a lot of people like make their own. I struggle with that to the point where I'm like, I'd much rather just use a product. Like, I'd much rather just buy gels and stuff. I really struggle with it. I found it. I don't know. I like the yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just flippant with my money and I should be a little bit more frugal.
No, with carbs, mate, we better be careful we don't push this out to 5 hours. But with carbs, gels 100%. Like you're with Precision, they make some of the best stuff. Gels are different because they're packaged in a way that, and the substance is like that. But carbs can be consumed in like just sugar or maltodextrin form if you want to carry it with water. But gels can't really be replaced because you need to carry something with you. And the texture of the gel is not, you can't, it's hard. It's really hard
tricky.
To make yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm quite picky about, like, mate, I hate a gel that is the wrong texture. I hate it.
Yeah. Precision have nailed that for sure. Yeah.
That's why I like Precision. And I've said this to Precision. I have no brand loyalty when it comes to things that are there to help performance. I have no brand loyalty. I'm not going to like tell my athletes to use or encourage people to use something that I don't think is the best. I'm always in search of what is the best gel, what is the best drink. Like, I just want to find the best one. Precision is that for me at the moment. Like, the reason I'm partnered with them is because I went to them and said, hey, like, I've been testing everything with myself and athletes. I think you got the best shit. Can you give us product? Like, that's why I'm with them. If I find something better, I've said that to them. I will tell them, like, hey, I'm going to go and approach this other brand. If they say yes, I'm going to go with them. Like, I just want the best thing. Precision gels are the best. Like,
yeah, you don't get sick of them.
I haven't. If you know something better, let me know. I'd like to try it. But I love their gels, and I feel the same about Nomio. Like a lot of people hate the taste. I don't mind it. I find it. Maybe I'm just used to it now. But like, it just works and it's easy. So like, I'm not going to go and try and fucking make my own or whatever. But I'll keep using it until I find something that's better. But yeah, mate, you should use it. Like,
no, I will. I'm going to use your code. I'm serious. I'll because I've already concluded that making it yourself is much harder than I realized. So I'll just I'll use your code moving forward. All right, my
I'll
next
message you
one
with
is
how we use it as well, and then give me
yeah, please.
feedback. I'll let you know. I'm not going to say how we do because I do think it's a bit of a performance benefit, but
Yeah,
I'll
there's
let
no
you
doubt.
know, and then give me some feedback, or yeah, maybe document it for me.
Yeah, good opportunity to do that because I've got a marathon build starting basically in a few weeks. So, yeah. My next one is saunas, and I've seen so much research around, improvements with red blood cell counts. I don't know the right terminology here. You might want to take over, but apparently it's really good for just general endurance. You had an expert on about 9 months ago, I'm going to say, of which I listened to the full episode and found it fascinating. You might want to tell me who that was. I don't remember his name, but I've been doing them lately. I've found them to be beneficial for sure. The only thing I'm struggling with is I'm sure they've raised my core body temperature and my general sweat rate has increased, which is a bit of a worry. But other than that, I'm going to keep doing them. I just got to a point where I was pushing 30 minutes straight in 95 degrees, which I think was just going too far with it. So I'm going to probably get to dial that back to 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think like with this, you got to be careful with heat. Like, I'm a believer in the benefits of heat for sure, but I also have just seen so many times how dangerous heat is, and like, there is pros and cons. So it's definitely not all just benefit. Like, so there's like research that comes out that like it has an increase in hemoglobin mass, or like, so the guy that I did it with, Elliot Jenkins, he's a
That's
he's a
him.
researcher. He did a study that was he got like a group of pretty serious runners to do 45-minute hot baths 5 times a week, and then he did it for like 5 weeks, or long period of time, right, to do that. And he noticed like, up like a pretty sizable improvement in VO2 max, like 3-5% type of thing, improvement in hemoglobin mass, that kind of thing. And so it definitely has those benefits, but there's also fatigue downside to it. So like your training can suffer, your sleep can improve, but also for some people it can suffer. So heat's like a fine line where I think, don't get caught up in having to do more always. Like, just like judge it by how you're feeling. Like, if you're starting to feel really tired, if your session quality is starting to suffer, if your sleep's starting to suffer, pare back, maybe take a week off, then get back into it. I don't think you have to push it. Like, there's some research about heat shock protein release, and you got to do some pretty gnarly passive heat to get that. Like, you've got to be 90 degrees Celsius for 60 minutes to get real benefit when it comes to heat shock protein release. And that's a long time for an endurance athlete. Like, I don't reckon many endurance athletes can really do that. So there's definitely like people who respond to it really well, and it benefits their recovery, and all these benefits it has to your blood volume and your hemoglobin mass and that kind of thing. But just test it, like experiment on yourself. Don't like take what someone else has done and have it as gospel. Treat yourself as a science experiment. Figure out what works for you. Figure out where you feel better, where you feel worse. That kind of thing would be my advice on that. So yeah, but if you want to listen to that podcast that I did, it's called The Norwegian Secret to Increase VO2 Max, and it's just like, it's an hour where we unpack this study that that he did, Elliot Jenkins did about heat. It's really good. My next one. So I don't know if this is a 1%er, but you touched on it early. It's revolving around hero sessions. I'm a believer in hero sessions, but I'm not a believer. I'm not a believer in hero training. So I don't think that you can be a hero day in, day out for a long period of time, but I reckon you can be occasionally. And Matthew Pavlich, who was the captain of Fremantle, gave a famous pre-game speech to his teammates one day, where he said, "Put on your Superman cape." And I say that to my athletes every now and then. Like, every now and then you've got to put on your Superman cape in training. You don't just have to save it for race day. Like, sure, you can't do it too often in training because you probably will take away from your ability to chuck your cape on in racing. But in training, every now and then, do a session where your cape's on. Take it off for 99, maybe 99.9% of sessions. Put it in the pocket. Don't be a superhero. But for that 0.1% of sessions, chuck the cape on, wear it with pride, do some crazy shit.
I say 3 times a build to the athletes that I coach. 2 to 3, 2 or 3, go max effort. But do not do it in the last 10 days before a race. Yeah. So I agree with that. 100%.
I
Because
quite like that.
I think it's good to try and learn to find where your like mental and physical limit is in training before you do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And a part of this is that the newer you are to training, the easier it is to put your cape on. And actually, you're probably putting your cape on most fucking days. So a lot of people who are new to the marathon or new to running or new to triathlon, they just go out and smack themselves every day. And then the fitter you get, the harder it becomes to do that. You've got to do more, you've got to do longer, you've got to do faster. And what actually happens is as you get fitter, as you get more experienced, you train much less hard. Your sessions are like you're doing much faster, much harder, much longer stuff, but you're doing it with much more ease than what you were early days. And like, I'll take myself, for example, when I was 120 kilos trying to get back into it, the first run I did with Gaines was 15K, easy as fuck jog for him. That 15K jog for me today would be so easy, but I buried myself for that 15K at 4:30 per K. Like I laid down on the ground for an hour afterwards. I was destroyed. And
Side of the road, right?
Yeah, man, I laid on the side of the road. I'm waiting for him to get back. I'm like, I hope he goes and runs for 40K because I need 2 hours on the side of the road here before I can walk again. I don't do that much anymore, and it's much harder to do it. And a lot of people, they just like go out when they're getting into running and they just jog fast, like to the point, like they probably run close to 5K pace 3 or 4 times a week, you know? Whereas how often do you touch on 5K pace now? Like a little bit in a session here and there. So I think you lose this the more and more you train and the fitter you get. So I think it becomes even more important for people who are really fit to occasionally chuck on the superhero cape. Whereas people who are actually newer and less fit, you actually probably have to encourage them to take the cape off pretty frequently because they're actually doing it a lot without meaning to.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And if you're someone that gets stuck in like doing a lot of steady stuff, it's hard to do this. I think you need to polarize it quite a lot and go quite easy, especially in the lead up to it and after it. Yeah, really good tip. I 100% subscribe to that. And I know a lot of athletes that I coach are listening to this and they will know that I recently talked about this in our Discord channel. So timely. My last one is one that is a little controversial, but I think more and more marathoners are picking it up. I'm keen to know if any triathletes do this. Probably not because it's a bit weird. But I love a Monster Energy drink before big workouts and races. So much so that when I race marathons, I drink a Monster Energy drink all the way up until the start of the race. I put the Monster Energy. So firstly, I open it up the night before, so it's not so carbonated, and I drink it all the way up to the start of the race. I put it in a drink bottle, and then I even got to a point a couple of years back when I was actually putting it at bottle stations and drinking it through the race. Something about it: caffeine, taurine, high amounts of carbs, some other weird stuff in there. I don't even know what it is, but somehow it works.
Is
Have
this
you tried it?
Are you doing the white Monster or the black?
No, the white Monster's got no sugar in it. I've tried that. It's absolutely delicious. It's probably the best flavor. But I'm talking about the black and green one, which is the original. Yeah.
Yeah, I figured, but the white one's so popular that I assumed you would do the black one, but I just wanted to, because a lot of people drink that white one. Mate, this is commonplace in triathlon. Like Red Bull sponsor a lot of triathletes. So Daniela Reeve, the 10-time world champion, she was sponsored by Red Bull. Kristian Blumenfeld, he's sponsored by Red Bull. He's famous for drinking Red Bulls. Like if you go and watch his YouTube videos, before all his big sessions, he's smacking a Red Bull. Like go to his Instagram, he's drinking Red Bull all the time. Like triathletes, mate, Red Bull and triathlon, like they're a married couple at this point. So yeah, this has been in triathlon for
ages.
Mate, I want to say like 15 years probably. This has been.
I swear it's not a thing in running. Hey, like running no one does it.
Not as much. Yeah. No, not as much. Not as much. I'm not sure why. Mate, anything that's in triathlon makes its way into running and cycling eventually. Triathletes are fucking strange characters. Like they're like weirdos and they try stuff that is weird and then becomes normal. Like it's just how things work. So like everything that is in triathlon eventually permeates its way into the running scene. And yeah, this energy drink thing is part of it. But yeah, commonplace. A lot of triathletes are doing this and taking caffeinated taurine sports drinks before racing and training. I think you got to be careful though, mate. Like particularly the older you are, thinking about your heart health is seriously important. So if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, don't think of yourself as invincible because you're really not, and your heart's not invincible. It's actually quite fragile. And the fitter you get, and the more you do, and the the more consistent you are over a long period of time, the more your heart's in trouble for issues. So just like this is like a point in time where I think it's important to touch on, like, if you are doing this stuff, all these big sessions we're talking about, if you're training consistently, if you've been doing it for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, just make a yearly heart check part of your life, because mate, our hearts they're strong and they're big, but they're often inflamed and they're often enlarged, and with all the stuff we're eating and drinking, there's a bit of a risk in having some blocked arteries and that kind of thing that could kind of find its way into your heart a little bit earlier than the everyday person. So especially if you're then chucking caffeine and sports drink and Red Bulls and Monsters on top of it, like, hey, that's not great for your heart if you're doing it consistently for years and years and years and years. So be a little bit careful. If you're going to do this, I wouldn't just take this as blatant advice. Like, if you're someone who wants to start doing 30K marathon sessions and taking Red Bull before it and that kind of thing, fucking please, for the love of God, go and get a heart check.
Yeah, good tip. All right, mate, we got to wrap up because I've got a commitment to get to. But have you got one more, or have you been through the 3?
Wake up time, Nomio, put your cape on occasionally. They were
Cape
my
on,
3.
that was it. Perfect. Mate, this has been the longest podcast that has been published on Sweat Elites, so congratulations and thank you for joining me for over 2 hours, I think it's been. I think we planned to do about an hour, so thanks for your time. It's been a good chat. And yeah, I'll put, how can people follow your journey? You're on Instagram, you're on Strava. How else can people get in contact with you if they're interested?
I'm actually off Strava at the moment. I got a Strava,
okay.
But I'm not really using it. Yeah, I mean, go and follow the Triathlon Hour on Instagram. Go and listen to our podcast, the Triathlon Hour. We just got a podcast, Maddie, as you know, where I get the best triathletes in the world on, best triathlon coaches in the world, and we talk about training. We just go deep on training, and then we also do like a group show where we just break down what happened on the big races. So like if there's a big race, like there was a big race at Ironman Texas or Ironman Frankfurt or Challenge Roth or Ironman Lake Placid this week, the day of that race, like once it's finished, we get on and for 2 hours we talk about what happened. But outside of that, like we talked about Kristian Blumenfeld, Gustav Eden, Casper Stoinas, Solveig Losseth, who's the women's Ironman world champion. We've had all of them on in the last kind of 2 months and done an hour and a half, 2 hours with all of them. And all we do is just talk about their training. How do they train? What do they do? Why do they do it? How do they do it? So that's what my podcast is, called the Triathlon Hour. If that sounds like your thing, go and give it a listen. Follow us on Instagram. Send me a DM on the Triathlon Hour. I try to get back to all of them. There is a lot of DMs that come in there, and Instagram's done this funny thing where I don't even see a lot of them, but if I see it, I reply to everyone that I see. So if you've got any questions, you want to know anything, send me a DM. I'll try and get back to you. But Maddie, thanks for having me on. I worried I was never going to talk to you again at one point in my life. I'm happy to see you out of the slammer, mate. It was good, but don't lose those good sleep habits that you developed in the jail in Japan, please.
Great tips. All the links to Jack's, everything you mentioned just then will be in the description. You can check them out. Definitely recommend the pod. I really enjoy it. I've learned a lot from it, so thank you. And looking forward to doing it again sometime soon, mate. Thanks again.
Thanks, Matty.